I am going to begin the July 12th, no, excuse me. Yes, the July 12th Planning and Transportation Commission meeting. Secretary, will you please call roll when you're ready?
Chair Alto.
Present.
Commissioner Guardias.
Present.
Commissioner Lowing.
Present.
Commissioner Monk. Present. Commissioner Rosenblum. Commissioner Suma. Present. And Vice Chair Waldvogel. 5 present, 2 absent.
Okay, quick disclosure, I forgot my prescription glasses tonight, so if I put these on to kind of see what's happening back there, it's not because I want to doze off. All right, why don't we begin? Well, let me just see something. Do we have oral communications? Yes, we have one speaker card. Mr. Carnahan, can you please come up?
Thank you, Chair Alchek and Commissioners. David Carnahan in the City Clerk's Office. I'm here to talk to you about Board and Commission recruitment. We are currently recruiting for the newly forming Stormwater Management Oversight Committee. This is a 7-member body that is going to oversee the funds collected and expenditures from the storm drain ballot election that passed in April. So this group will meet once or twice a year to review the potential expenditures and the money coming in to make sure that the city is operating within the bounds of the election. There are going to be 7 terms. 4 of them are full terms ending in 2021, and then 3 are 2-year terms ending in 2019. The deadline to apply is August 1st at 4:30 p.m. We have applications available on the City Clerk's website, www.cityofpaloalto.org/clerk. And I will be giving each of you a flyer, and you are encouraged to pass it out to someone you think would be a good applicant and to reach out to any other community members you think might be interested and would provide a good oversight role. Thank you very much.
Okay, that is the only speaker card I have for oral communications. Actually, it's the only speaker card I have in general. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to participate tonight, there are speaker cards available. You fill them out, write your agenda the number of your agenda item, and then when the time comes, I'll be able to call you up. All right, why don't we begin with, are there any additions or deletions? No. Okay, why don't we start with the Assistant Director's report, the Director's report.
Thank you, Chair Alchek and Commissioners. I'm Hillary Gittleman, the Planning Director, and I'm filling in for Assistant Director Jonathan Late this month. He's on a well-deserved vacation, so you'll be seeing him again in August, but in the meantime, I'll very much enjoy spending this evening and your next meeting with you. I just have a brief report. First, I just wanted to say, you probably are aware, we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. Our plan is to try and spend about an hour on the first item, the comp plan item, talking about kind of the issues that we think are going to be important to focus on in our upcoming meetings. Then we have a short subdivision tentative map item on Buena Vista project. We think that's relatively straightforward and shouldn't take more than 20 or 30 minutes. And then the longest item of the evening probably is the last one, and someone will be here to present that. It's a current planning application. So on other upcoming or other informational items, just before the council went on its summer break, they adopted the budget for the city, and I summarized the department's part of that budget is basically saying it's a status quo budget for the planning and transportation divisions. We have a full plate on our hands for the staff that we have, and we'll just keep rolling along. Really were not many big changes. I do know that there were questions at the budget hearings, and then there was a question from at least one of the commissioners about the Fry's site and planning for that in the future. And we told the council the night of the budget hearing, and I'll communicate to you that we're applying for a grant from the VTA through the OBAG process, or One Bay Area process, to fund that planning effort. We should know in early September whether we received the grant, and then our plan is to go to council to actually accept the funds and add them to the budget. That would be the process. At that point, we would come to the Planning Commission and we'd have a discussion with you about the scope of that study and the schedule and kind of how that would move forward. So it'll be sometime in the fall that we circle back with you on that question. We also provided in the packet a look ahead at some of the agendas, and I see that there are already some updates we need to make in that list that we provided to you, so I'll make sure to do that before your next meeting. Your next meeting, similar to this meeting, will have, we think, 3 items. The comp plan item, the rail program update and discussion, and the downtown parking item. So the other ones are going to move out. So that's what it's looking out like right now. Thanks very much.
Okay. Let's begin our study session, the comprehensive plan update study session. Let's talk about, why don't you guys begin with your synopsis, and then we can provide some input.
Okay. Members of the commission and the chair, my name is Elaine Costello. I've been working for the last year or so with the CAC and the staff and the council on the comp plan update, and we're happy to be here tonight with you. And so we're going to just go through this quick PowerPoint. As you know, the council referred the comp plan update to you on June 12th, and at your June 14th meeting, you decided to focus on the land use and transportation elements. And so we sent you a report, which, don't worry, we're not going to go through the whole thing tonight, but it's really meant to be sort of the master report for the whole review, sort of kind of lays out what's in the plan, what's in the comp plan, what's legally required in the comp plan, where there's so much background information. It sets up links for that. We hope that we'll get a lot of use out of that as we work through our review. But the key thing for tonight is that we, at the staff level, took a look at what we thought were the key issues, because you had talked about at your meeting on June 14th about what issues are you going to discuss in land use and transportation. So we took the first stab by going through and trying to identify what were some of the key issues and some of the key updates in the comp plan. In each, we divided it by goal because that was a useful way to kind of frame them. And so it was our attempt to say these are some of the things that the CAC spent a lot of time on and the council spent a lot of time on. These are major updates. And that's from our perspective. So the major focus for tonight is to talk through those with you, and then to see if there are specific issues that you would like to focus on in upcoming meetings that are important to you. And because if we can start identifying the issues before we get to a meeting, we have lots of background information, and we can make that available when you're having that discussion. So the earlier that we can do it, the better. So for tonight, for the objectives, the next slide is, what are the objectives of the PTC's review? And what we're really looking at is high-level adjustments to policies and programs in the land use and transportation elements. And there are also, for each element, there's an implementation plan table. So we'll ask you to review that for land use and transportation too. So what would you recommend to change those to make them better address major issues? And then you are the major users of the comp plan. What would make this document more usable for you and for the public that you meet with? You have a better sense of that than anybody else, because you use this to review projects, and so how does it more usable to you? The next thing we're going to shift to is how are we going to do this in terms of time? So we're going to go to the. We actually are proposing, just to show, a change from what we put in terms of the schedule, because we started to think about how can we do this, that we sort of build up some momentum and you kind of get your feet on the ground in terms of reviewing this. And we thought that moving the transportation element to be the first element would be a good change, because the land use element is really the one where it's some very heavy lifting, some very complex issues. And we felt like diving right into that first might be just a little overwhelming. Whereas if we could start with transportation, because the transportation has a lot of very important goals and policies in it, it was less controversial at both the CAC and the council. So we feel like it would give you some momentum. And the other thing is we wanted to make sure we have enough time for land use. And by starting with transportation, we actually have 3 meetings to talk about land use, and we're dividing them up into different goals. And so anyway, that's our recommendation, is that we switch it from starting with land use to starting with transportation and doing that in 1 meeting and then moving to land use and having 3 meetings for land use. So we look forward to your thoughts on how that will work. So working on that, I wanted to just talk about some of the issues that we see coming up in transportation and in land use. So that if we talk about what we're going to do in the transportation element, there's some really critical things. There's a list of transportation infrastructure investments that the council added during their review. There's a whole discussion of single occupant vehicle use, traffic congestion, connectivity, neighborhood impacts, parking, safety, transit-dependent community. This was a big addition from the CAC. There wasn't much about the transit-dependent community in the old comp plan, and there's more in this one, and regional cooperation. So those are the ones that we identified in the transportation element. And the way we propose it is we kind of go through it goal by goal. In the land use element, we're proposing to break that up into a couple of meetings. The first meeting, and this is basically the heaviest lifting, and at this point that is for the August 9th meeting. And that is the goal 1, the non-residential growth management, which includes the issues of height and the amount of future office and R&D space. It was an issue that the CAC and the council both spent a lot of time on. And then the next issue was housing, which was another issue that we know has taken a lot of time with every other group and probably is something you're going to really want to delve into. And then ensuring neighborhood compatibility, and then the issue of hotels and commercial centers. So we think that's going to take up a whole meeting. Just those 4 goals would be our view. Then the next meeting, which would be the August 30th meeting, we would do the other goals in land use, which are, and other issues, the issues in employment districts, reducing auto trips, the mix of uses at Stanford Research Park, urban design, issues of compatibility and avoidance of abrupt changes, historic resources, protecting historic resources, and how we use the TDR ordinance and whether we change it so that the only transfers can be done for residential developments, civic uses, which I think is more straightforward, and public streets and open spaces. And that's a whole other, that would be a whole other meeting. And so our intent is that, did I skip it? Oh, and the last meeting would be about implementation. We have this extra 3rd land use meeting, so if something comes up that takes a little longer, and we do the implementation table, and then the final meeting would be about the EIR and then wrapping up. And our proposal, wasn't there one about what the recommendations would be? I don't know where that went. Okay. That we feel like the greatest value that the PTC has is that you use this document. And that the more that you can bring your experience to this, or your expectations, or what's useful to you to the review, the more helpful it's going to be. What we're proposing is that the form of your recommendations would be that we would probably, at each meeting, we would take notes and of where the discussion is going. There'd be a series of straw motions, and then we'd create a set of motions, or 1 motion at the end of every meeting, of the things that you would like to see, comments that you have, things you'd like to see changed, things that you support, and we'd put together a motion so that every meeting, the result of every meeting would be a motion from that meeting. It might be more than 1, depending on how the chair wants to organize it, but we're looking at a series of motions so that we can get a clear record from you to go to the council as the recommendation. And we recommend that the changes be at the policy level, that it's not wordsmithing. This document has already benefited from a lot of wordsmithing. At this point, we're really looking to you guys to be at the high level saying, I'm just going to give an example. This isn't something I'm recommending, but for example, there should be stronger policies on transit-dependent use, or there should be stronger policies on congestion. That's kind of where we're going, as opposed to change the wording of policy X to put another adjective in, if that's clear. So those are our recommendations about how we approach this review and how we approach the schedule. We're not asking for action from you tonight, but we are asking for two things. Is this generally agreeable? But most importantly, is there an issue that you want to talk about that you don't see on this list? And of course, some of this may occur to you as you sit and listen to your colleagues. If you can email us within a week or so about anything that you say, whoa, I went home and I realized I want to talk about this too, so that we can be in the position to say, here's the background that we have on that, that would be great. So that completes the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the most important thing is we're going to give some feedback tonight. But before we do that, I want to talk about logistics, because of course I'm partly responsible for that, and I want to make sure that this process goes smoothly. I really like the idea of adjusting the dates and starting with the transportation goals. I'd like us to do that. There's a third reason. You sort of named two good reasons. Number one, it allows us to sort of get our feet wet with the process of reviewing this document and on what could potentially be a less controversial topic. And then the second was that it could potentially allow for us to have more time to spend on land use. I think the third, and I would argue most important reason why it makes sense to switch it is so that we have a continuity of discussion. If, for example, we need more time on land use, I don't want us to come back to it after 2 meetings of transportation. I think it makes a lot of sense for us to stay with it in consecutive meetings before sort of switching topics. So unless anybody has any really strong objections to that, I think that's a very good idea. And then I just want to reiterate, because it's worth hearing feedback tonight, but this strategy, which will be to, as we're having a discussion at these meetings, staff will be taking copious notes based on the comments that you make during our review of these policies and this comprehensive plan. And at the conclusion of the meeting, staff will enumerate sort of a list of perspectives, I guess. And we will run down the list in a sort of a straw poll fashion, right? And vote. Oh, excuse me. And share our sort of group view on each item. That, as opposed to making motions consistently through the night that might get convoluted, staff will keep track of sort of the different points that we've made, and then we'll review them together as a group, and then vote sort of in a straw poll fashion, at which point staff will put together one motion that represents all of those straw poll votes. This is another item, if any of you have some questions about this strategy, let's talk about it. But I think that's a good process. And then at every meeting, we'll have one motion that represents that review, which I think also is good. That would be as opposed to having a motion at the end of the whole process that summarized the things we talked about. And I think one of the things that came up in our pre-meeting as to why this strategy of having it at the conclusion of every meeting for the items reviewed is because if for some reason someone's not at a follow-up meeting, if someone misses a meeting in between, then when they vote on that motion, the opportunity to discuss and vote would happen the same night as the discussion on the items reviewed. Does that make sense? So anyways, this idea of essentially straw polling the items reviewed every night and then voting on a motion for those items, so that at the conclusion of this, there would be either 3 or 4 motions that come together and represent our advice to council on how to move forward. Is that right?
If I could just add one thing, then I guess the report that we would suggest that the commission forward to the council would contain all of those motions from each evening and the transcripts of your meetings. So the council will not just have the motions that were the end result of your discussions, but as usual, they'll have the full substance of your dialogue, including all of the ideas that were floated but then didn't pass in the motion. So it'll be a very comprehensive report to council at the end of this process.
Okay, so I just reiterate. So for example, if the last meeting of this process, someone was absent, they actually would still have participated in the process and be on record through the various debates that we've had at every meeting and the various motions that pertain to those items discussed. So that's the strategy. If anybody wants to sort of opine about that, this is a good time to do that. But as staff mentioned, the key here is to provide some feedback on. I'm going to come to you next. Some feedback on the issues to review. So I wanted you guys to keep that in mind as you delved into this. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Suma, and we'll just go down the lane and try to attack everything, and we'll come back if you guys need to add items. And then last comment, because we're missing 2 commissioners tonight, I want to reiterate that the opportunity to send an email is a real one. So if something comes up even an hour from now and you want to add an issue, please, let's do that, because I think it will add to the quality of the discussion we have later. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, a question for staff. So I wasn't quite clear on these meetings. I guess it's basically 4, 1 transportation, 3 land use, whether we would have other items on the agenda as is indicated. So we are going to have as full a schedule. Because I think Director Gittleman said we would spend that land use meeting, the first one, our whole meeting on it, or did I misunderstand?
We unfortunately do have pretty full agendas the next few meetings. So I don't know that we can promise that we'll be able to only have the comp plan. It looks like on August 9th, for example, when we, or on July 26th, we're going to have 3 other items. On August 9th, we'll have 2 other items. August 30th, there'll be 1, and it'll be hopefully short. So we are going to be multitasking.
So how long do you expect, or do you anticipate we would spend on the comp plan item at each meeting?
I think that's up to the commission. I mean, we can stay here as late as we need to. Hopefully, it won't be too late. But I'm thinking that some evenings, when we discuss goals 1 through 4 in land use, it might take us a good 2-3 hours. But when we have other evenings, maybe it's not that long. Maybe it's just an hour.
Okay, and my concern is just there were a bunch of colleagues that were very concerned about rushing the process, so I want to be mindful that we don't fall into rushing it again. The other question was, do you have I forget if this was asked, a red-lined copy of the council? So the CAC submitted a draft to the council, and then you submitted the council's draft to us. Is there a red-lined version so we can easily identify changes?
I'm going to let Elaine get into the detail, but we do have this website that's a fantastic resource. Everything we have is on there. So you should go through the different versions that are available on there, and you'll see what we have.
Okay, so there's a red-lined version from the council discussion. Or did you not make one?
We don't have one that tracks all the way. We have one, you can watch the evolution of it. There are red lines from meeting to meeting, but there were so many changes, particularly in land use, that it got to the point where you couldn't tell what was going on. So you have to, there isn't one that starts with the CAC version and ends with the council version, but you can watch the evolution. We've given links to all the different staff reports where you can see how, for example, if you have a question, and we've tried to be really comprehensive about this, if you have a question about an issue in land use, we link you to where it was discussed and what the changes were made.
Okay, thanks. So I don't know if there's an electronic way to send a Word document in Microsoft and just have the, maybe my colleagues know, have the machine compare them and spit out the differences. Somebody told me there was a way to do that. So that might be something to consider. And then the idea of having kind of a straw poll and staff gathering our comments, I think that's great. I think when it comes to a motion, though, and I would like staff to gather them and feedback so we don't forget. I think the motion should come from this board, though. I'm not very familiar with motions coming from staff except in the recommendation. So since it's going to be coming not out of the staff report recommendation, but from our specific concerns addressed that night, I guess I would feel more comfortable with staff's help of one of us making the motion. Thanks.
Hold on. Is there anything you want to? I want to take this opportunity to also provide feedback on the issues that you would like us, the feedback.
So my main concern was land use and to really see what changes had been made since the 2-year CAC process with all the staff input and consultants and members of the public to see what was really changed, because I think that'll show us what the council was thinking that might have been different from what the public process came up with.
And if I can just interject, I think Commissioner Suma is right on that. That's a good way to sort of explore the land use element. You should be aware that there was a lot of reorganization done. For example, all of those housing programs and policies were sprinkled all through land use when it came from the CAC, and at the council they all got put into one goal and a series of programs. So it's a little hard to track, but I think with a close reading, you'll I mean, particularly because you're so familiar with the original product, you'll be able to sort of see how it evolved.
First thing is that I would support the new schedule with going transportation up front. And I would focus my attention more on any redundancies when I review it. So I know you said not to wordsmith. I hope that wouldn't be considered wordsmithing. I am wondering if there's broader categories that can be lumped together. I personally don't find this a very user-friendly document. So my feedback might be a little bit more practical in making it more digestible and reducing redundancies. So if we can just bake that kind of into the discussion, I don't think there needs to be motions for that. It would be more of a dialogue and stylistic, I would imagine.
I'd just like to add that that is one of the goals of, maybe I wasn't clear enough about it, that making it more usable. There is still redundancy in there, so when people see redundancy, that isn't wordsmithing. To say, I think you could collapse these. There was a lot of, I think Director Gittleman made a good point, that part of why it's hard to compare CAC was the council was trying to get rid of redundancy and reorganize things, but there's still a lot of redundancy, so we welcome those kinds of comments to get it to be more user-friendly.
Maybe you can just explain where that's coming from, because when we do our review, and if I'm doing my personal notes and bringing them here, I'm wondering how much time to invest in it if we're not going to end up making the changes. So why is the redundancy there? And thank you for confirming that you are amenable to streamlining things.
I think part of why the redundancy happened was that we did have different committees at the CAC, and they would all want to make sure an issue was included. And so it would show up in a couple of different elements. And so the council was very aware of that and wanted to make sure the policy direction was there, but not, there was this whole thing about how if there's 4 different places where something slightly differently worded is, it's really not usable as a document to review projects. So we've tried to reduce that, but you're going to be looking at it with fresh eyes. We've been at it for a long time, so sometimes we just think, oh, yeah, it's in there. So that's kind of how it happened, was because there were different subcommittees, and different people worked on it, and they would add a policy thinking, gosh, we need to cover this too. So,
And if I can just add one thought to that, which is we also had a lot of, and the CAC had a lot of different source material. So they were looking at the current comp plan, the comp plan changes that have been developed by the PTC, then a whole slew of public comments that we got digitally, and then comments of people who would attend the meetings. So they were trying to assimilate like all these different materials, and I think inevitably one subject was tackled in a few different ways in some of the elements, and to the extent you identify where that's still happening, we'd be happy to clean those up.
And then just as a practical matter, the way it's numbered on the pages, I don't know if you're planning on putting in some sort of a numbering system, but when you're referring to certain numbers, they're hard to correlate. I don't know what the solution is, or if this is going to be the final piece of it, but perhaps when we're having a discussion on those, if you can include page numbers in any sort of presentation so we know where to look to find the certain policies that you're referencing. Just to the extent you can include page numbers. And those, again, I understand that this is a draft and those page numbers are subject to change.
yeah, we were writing the staff report while the page number, we didn't have the final document when we were writing it, so as much as we can. And we know that there are glitches like that, yeah, thank you.
Are you amenable to combining large sections or anything like that, or are the sections and the elements going to stay as they are in the main categories?
You mean the topics that are covered in each chapter? I mean, I think you're welcome to bring up those ideas. That has kind of already been discussed at the CAC and the council on a couple different occasions. But if there's, sort of an obvious anachronism, something that you think is really odd, I think feel free to bring that up and we'll discuss it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'll just add, my perspective is this is less about what sort of staff is amenable to, and more about how we will communicate what we believe is important to council. So I don't know that the draft will change when it makes its way to council after our report. I think our report will reflect the shared perspective that we had about changes that may or may not need to be made, and then council will have that opportunity to sort of decide. So as we sort of delve into this, I think we should look at it through that lens. It's not so much whether staff was willing to make a change or not. It's whether the change is worthy of the support of the commissioners on this panel in a majority, and then if so, then council will hear it. And that's really how this is set up. Okay, I'm going to jump in, make a few comments. I want to sort of acknowledge what Commissioner Suma said about the meetings. I think in addition to this adjusted schedule, I think it makes sense for us to calendar items unrelated to the comprehensive plan first in our meetings. So now let me ask a quick question. How will public comment play a role in our meetings? Can it be limited?
We believe these should be conducted as public hearings, so it'd be good if you would invite public comment. Maybe we'll do a traditional approach where staff presentation, then public comment, then commissioner discussion and action.
Okay. I imagine that maybe when that happens, depending on the size of the crowd, we can limit comments to sort of a shorter length, only because I want to, from my perspective, the public participation has really taken place in large part during the CAC, not to suggest that there still isn't an opportunity, but I think sort of 2 to 3 hours is, we should be careful what we wish for. A whole meeting on one item could be really daunting. So I do think taking this in small bites or medium-sized bites over the course of a month and a half or 2 months on each element makes sense. But I also think let's do the other business first so that we're not rushed with respect to the other business. Because if we take 3 hours or 2.5 hours to discuss an item, an element, policy issues, and then it's getting late, then those other items might suffer. Whereas if we start with the other items and then we carry along, well, we have a lot of flexibility to add a meeting to discuss land use. And I want to make one other point actually while it's on my head. The month of August is a long month, and if we are so inclined, if there's the sense that there needs to be more time, it's like a 5-week month. If we wanted to add a meeting in that month, basically we have a meeting on the second week and we have a meeting on the 5th week of that month. Depending on how we feel, if there's a sense that we really need more time, we can always elect to add a meeting in our time frame. But again, that's something we can get to when we get there. Okay, so with respect to some of the feedback, I'm going to reiterate some of the stuff that you already have in here, but I'm going to be particularly interested in sort of understanding how the CAC wrestled with the issues within the housing sections, particularly this notion of adjusted height limits, where better design was a factor, or it says here even in specific areas to encourage diverse and affordable range of housing options. I think I'm not familiar enough with how that was dealt with at the CAC, and I'm going to be excited to sort of see how that came through on the comprehensive plan. This is another sort of question about zoning changes and that essentially encourage potentially denser housing in areas that are, let's say, in the downtown or areas that are served very strongly by transit. I'll be interested to see how the comp plan sort of encourage. Those are areas that I think speak to the sort of future of addressing the housing crisis, and those are areas that I'm going to be particularly interested in delving into. I noticed in the transportation element that you have a list of infrastructure investments. It's my impression that there was a discussion at CAC level about a transit center at University Avenue. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought there was this concept of potentially, well, I'll just put it at that. The possibility of sort of a focused transit center at University Avenue, I think, would be interesting. I think it's worth in this discussion some exposure or some context provided around bicycle plan specific goals. I don't know if this is the right area to have any if there's context for this sort of specific area plans with respect to the University Avenue or the Cala Avenue stations. It was sort of strongly suggested that this VMT metric is one that we should be placing more emphasis on. And I think it would be very informative to understand how that discussion took place prior to this draft and how this draft introduces VMT in addition to what some people feel is a less efficient metric, the LOS. I wonder if again, I'm not that familiar with the CAC's sort of process and discussion, but I'd be curious to see how how much specificity they went into with respect to parking goals. You've talked about the SHOOP formula before on this commission, but just, do we have a shared understanding of what is our optimum parking utilization, and is that incorporated into the comp plan? And I wouldn't be surprised if during our discussion of transportation that came up, and there was I wouldn't be surprised if this commission recommended, some articulation of what an ideal parked street is, so that as we move forward, again, the ultimate goal here is that we can rely on this document to help us, review all the projects and business that we do. And so, in that regard, more specificity, I think it will help. And so, I think we will probably review that item. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And I will reserve the right to email you if I come up with a few more items that I think I'd like to hear more specifics about. But I'm excited about this process. Go ahead.
I'm okay with the new batting order of transportation and then land use, and the weighting of 1 and 3, feels about right. Just echoing Commissioner Suma, I would not be overly optimistic that if we study transportation for all of an hour, that we could be confidently making motions to suggest changes to council that CAC's worked on for 18 months and council's worked on for 3 years. So I'm less inclined to favor weekly votes as opposed to waiting to the end. And at the least, if it's in the 1 hour frame, for the reasons stated, I'm not sure we should be doing that. And I think that having all 3 meetings on land use before making recommendations or changes on land use might make some sense at all, as well. So the proposal is kind of suggesting 4 different reports, whereas we're trying to consider if we want to do an optional report. So it seems a little bit, I get it, and I like the idea that folks that are at each of those meetings, as opposed to miss those, at least get to vote on those. That makes some sense, but I'm wondering if that's sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So just want to give that some thought. And I definitely think we should be looking at policy rather than structural changes or any wordsmithing whatsoever. We should have a gavel up here when wordsmithing comes up, and it's ruled out of order, because that's been done definitely and successfully been done for the last year and a half. I also, in 2 or 3 places, wrote in here red lines as I was reading this report for the exact same reason that Commissioner Suma mentioned. It's going to be a lot easier for her because she's been sleeping with these documents under her pillow for 18 months. And some of us are starting pretty fresh with this. So getting up to speed to have the confidence, again, to recommend changes on substantive things like this to council, would like to know the deltas there. And just hearing your conversation earlier, I was wondering if we could even get a red line from, what they decided on the 12th versus what was in that before on, I think that was land use. I haven't rewatched that yet, but if there's even some interim thing, we can get some of it as opposed to all of it. I think that would be a head start for us. Because if we have to go to the website and look at a whole bunch of different, documents and council meetings, it's just going to be, it just takes a lot of time. I think the items that you've outlined and that others have added to here, like Commissioner Alchek, I think are fine. We only have so many things that we can prioritize as being something that we might want to comment on. So I think that's fine. Let's see if I have one other thing. Nope, I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it will be my pleasure to edit upcoming meeting minutes from this meeting and read again the comment about having the comp plan under somebody's pillow for 18 months. No? Okay. So just going to the business. In terms of the motions, I'd like to see them by line item and then of course formulated by this commission by line item, which we may get to the granularity of the policy level under each goal. I think it's natural, but you may help us with some visual representation. I think sometimes we struggle with formulation of emotion if we don't have a laptop in front of us, or if it's changes. There is a process at the council where somebody types the motion as it's formulated at the council, and then it's a subject of a vote. They can see it on the screen. It would help us to formulate the motions. So if you could just provide this assistance throughout the process of the comprehensive plan review, probably it would be great help. We can verify this after the first or second meeting if it's truly helpful, but maybe I think it would help us to really understand what's in the motions precisely. So that's number one. In terms of the priority, I also would be interested in precise identification of the public version of the comprehensive plan. It would be, because I didn't participate in the process like my colleague Commissioner Suma, it would be harder for me to identify the proper document. So if you could at least point to one document, maybe portion of this, where we can clearly see the result out of CAC, and maybe even better to compare it with the document that we have in front of us.
You know what, I mean, I'm sure we can talk about this further, but I think the first thing I would recommend is exploring this website, and you'll see all of the various iterations. I think just dip into it, for an hour and see what you gain from that. I've learned over many months at this now that often the most effective way to understand the trajectory of this project is to go back to the current comp plan that's still in effect. These aren't really long sections. We're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of pages. The land use element is what, 20 pages or something? Read the current version and then read what's in this document that we shared with you, and you'll have a good sense of all of the kind of cumulative effect of all of the input and all of the reviews. I often think that is more helpful than tracing every step along the way, the first CAC meeting, the second CAC meeting, the fifth CAC meeting.
No, I would like to
council.
sorry for interrupting, but I'd like to have the results from the last meeting before it went to the council. I'd like to understand the delta between this plan that we have currently in front of us and this what came out of CEC. It's the same request that Commissioner Suma made.
You'll be able to find that on the website. The CAC looked at it in pieces and recommended the elements to the council in one at a time. But you'll be able to find on the website those versions that they recommended to the council in time sequence. And so you'll be able to see kind of how this came together.
Okay.
I think just to continue that, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think what we can do is take what the final recommendation was of the CAC, because it really does not work anymore. There was so much reorganization that to give you a red line between the two, you would just say, oh my God, I can't even read this, because that's what happened with the council. They got to the point of but I think we can take the last version of the CAC, right? We can just give you a list for the next meeting. Here's transportation, here's what we're going to be doing. Here's what came out of the CAC. Here's links to the staff reports on the council on transportation, and you'll be able to pretty quickly figure it out. They're not that long, about the issues that are of concern to you. If we do this with transportation, we can see how that works then.
Yes, thank you very much. I would appreciate this very much. For me and perhaps for my colleagues, just doing this additional work, it just places burden in addition to our work hours and thinking about some potential challenges. So thank you very much. In terms of the schedule, I understand that we're going to have some flexibility because it's going to be hard to predict Nobody did truly some mathematical analysis how long it's going to take us to go through each one of those, right? So we need to be flexible, and if we finish before some time, maybe let's just start, and we still have energy, let's move to another topic. If we go beyond if it continues, let's just stay here for longer, just until we can just reach some consensus. And then, we of course limited ourselves with the motion that we will just address two of those, housing element and the transportation element. But then, if there is, say, in regards to the flexibility, if we finish early, perhaps this commission would be interested to explore additional elements. I'm saying that pretty much we don't know how long it's going to take us. So
Yeah,
I'm asking both.
let me interject real quick. This is a very good suggestion. Maybe because we have to notice the discussion, maybe it makes sense for you to create overlap. If you're going to do policies 1 through 4, why don't we do 1 through 5 and then 4 through, like you get a little ambitious in the first meeting just in case you. The general consensus is we're very worried we will be rushed. But in the unlikely event, maybe you just act ambitious in case we want to talk about the next item, and since not noticed, we might have an issue. So I think that's a very good suggestion.
Thank you. There is a question I have that's similar that my colleague mentioned about the infrastructure investment. There is a list of certain investments. How much council is open if we add to this list or revise to this list? It goes beyond the policy itself. Is it subject also of our review and recommendations and changes?
Definitely, I would encourage you to look at that section, and if you, in your recommendation, want to add something or subtract something from that list, I think the council would be interested to hear that and why.
Okay, because there are some here, I don't want to go through the examples, but some that pretty much when we're going to get to the discussion, I'd be looking for understanding how come we're going to extend Gang Road to connect with Laura Lane. There's a post office, so pretty much we would like to know, once we're going to get to this, we would like to please be prepared to share the background of this, which I'm sure that you may have already, but it may become handy. And then one last organizational item. That's maybe of the lesser importance, but then it would be nice to have these meetings with the background of the Palo Alto zoning map, and then maybe some portable microphone if somebody wants to argue and point to a map, and then explore certain parts of Palo Alto or point at certain parts of the zoning plan. That would be useful element. Not of the size. I'm talking about the large board size, if it's possible. It's a small ask. If it's possible to arrange it, that's fine. But if it's going to create an issue, I don't need it that much. Thank you.
Let me just since some thought was put into this, let me just try to reiterate the idea that I think I didn't articulate very well with respect to the process. So we're going to go through a lot of different items as we review the goals, and let's say, for example, someone on the commission suggests, I really think we need to. I really think council should consider the following stronger language, or they should be considering adding the following emphasis on such and such. The sort of strategy that we came up with, that staff came up with, was that every commissioner would be speaking about their sort of perspective. Staff would take very copious notes, very similar to the way that a council meeting is run, where they're taking lots and lots of notes. And then we would break. Staff would then organize the notes that they took, get together. We would come back, and then staff would say, there was one of the commissioner stated views was X, and then we would have an opportunity to quickly vote on it. Is there a majority consensus on that recommendation? That's not to say there wouldn't be opportunity to debate during the whole commission meeting, but at least that way everybody's views had an opportunity to get voted, as opposed to somebody feeling like, oh, I didn't get to make a motion, or I didn't get to make a straw poll. The goal will be for staff to sort of keep up with us, really. And then obviously if someone's had something that didn't make it on that list, or you guys somehow missed it, they should bring it up. I'm sure we'll all be taking our own notes. And then at the conclusion of that meeting, there will be a result, right? Let's say I had 3 items that I had mentioned. Staff reiterated them to us. We took a straw poll, and only one of the 3 received consensus on this commission. Staff would have a second list where they would write down the things that received majority consensus, and that would make up the motion that any of you could make that night, or any of us could make. And so the idea here is actually to be very diligent about recording our conversation, so that at the conclusion of what is a very complex discussion, we can then say, okay, here's all the things we talked about tonight. Here's how the group felt on the items that they had consensus on. When you create your motion to suggest we would like to, these are the recommendations we would make to council, they would include those. There'd only be one report at the conclusion of this process, if we choose to make it. And it would include each night's summary. Again, this is, I'm not imposing this process on us. I'm just suggesting this was the strategy. I didn't mean to suggest that they would make the motion for us, or that there would be any lost opportunity to sort of make our own stamp on this. I think what I meant to sort of emphasize is that staff will be utilizing a process that we haven't utilized before, which is to essentially record as many sort of talking points that we've come up with, and then to reiterate them back to us, so that you don't feel like you're under pressure to remember everything that you talked about that night. So if anybody wants to sort of reflect on that, I'm happy to hear it. Do you have a comment?
I just have a quick comment, which is I know this is going to be a heavy lift with other items on your agendas, and I think in my introductory remarks, I even screwed up the dates and told you what was on the August meeting instead of the next meeting. But anyway, every one of these meetings, you have other items. And so I just wanted to say that, you know, the staff is willing to start earlier if you were able to start earlier in the day, and we also would be willing to have special meetings if you feel like that's the best way to accomplish your review, and hold a meeting or two, as the chair suggested in August. There's, you know, a good opportunity for that, to focus solely on this effort. It's you know, we're at your disposal if that's your desire.
Oh, well, that's a very generous offer. What I would suggest is that we try for this first meeting on transportation, beginning at 6 as usual, and we begin with the agendized items that are not related to the comp plan, and hopefully we can be efficient and get through those items in a suitable manner, and then, you know, have an opportunity to spend 2 or 3 hours discussing the transportation plan, and then anything that carries over from that discussion we'll pick up at the next meeting. I think Commissioner Gardias made a really good point, which is, for example, let's say we don't finish the all the items related to transportation at our next meeting. If that carries over into the following meeting, and we only spend 45 minutes on that, then the remaining couple hours of that meeting that's devoted to comprehensive plan review, we should begin the land use section. And I think, unless anybody objects, I think the commission will probably be supportive of that and that sort of flexibility. And I'm really glad to hear that you, and again, that's a second question there. If at the next meeting you feel like, you know, why don't we start at 5 so we don't end at 11? You know, raise that issue. We can do that. Look, at the end of the day, I think everybody wants to be proud of our work here, and so I can't imagine anybody sort of standing in a way of any reasonable requests for, you know, greater flexibility or more, you know, more time to use. So I appreciate that. Does anybody else want to add anything? Yeah.
So just referring to the packet on page 16, where staff says that it will not be feasible to implement all of the programs over the 15-year life of the plan. It's the third paragraph down. and that you need to prioritize. Is it to your benefit to continue to keep all of the programs in here, or do we want to look at any that we can prioritize and remove in some way? Is that part of our objective?
Well, I think we'd be open to, if you wanted to recommend to the council any programs that you thought were redundant or not something that should be in the plan, of course, you could do that. We do, anticipate as we continue working on this with the council, they haven't really looked at the prioritization of the programs yet, to be honest with you. You're seeing it before they did, really. And so your thoughts on whether things are prioritized correctly would be really useful. And I think that the council will probably also weigh in on that in their final review.
So looking, for example, for the programs for the transportation element, they're summarized on pages, it's at the back of the comp plan,
Right.
9 through 21, and I counted about 90 programs just quickly sitting up here. Are we looking at all of those and discussing those at that first meeting?
Yeah, I think we want to hear at the first meeting if you have any issues with any of them.
And are they prioritized in some way
Just to the extent they've been identified as
long-term, short-term?
long-term, short-term.
But other than that, there's no other
That's right.
prioritization? Right. Okay.
And this is an important point. It's actually, we're suggesting the Planning Commission that will be reviewing these programs on an annual basis. So the municipal code section requires the commission to conduct an annual review of the comp plan. We're suggesting every December, you're going to look at this list and you're going to help us rearrange priorities or suggest different priorities that then we could take into consideration during the budget process with the council. And as we craft the annual report, we have to submit to the state on the housing element and the comp plan, which happens at the end of March. April 1st is the deadline.
And thank you for bringing that up, because you do mention that we have to review it in December, and I wasn't sure if that was going to be the case for this year.
Yeah, I think so. And so it's good to become familiar with this table because it's going to be our friend every December.
All right, and still being relatively new on the commission, I just want to review the Brown Act and any, since we have Albert here, is there anything that you want to share with us about who we can talk to or not talk to in our preparation of the comp plan review, council members, public?
I think the basic rules, are good to keep in mind, which are that you don't want to have a conversation with the quorum or more of the planning commission outside of a noticed meeting, and so that includes serial meetings. If you are meeting with one person and another separately, you want to make sure in total you are not meeting with more than a quorum.
So our review of the comp plan is subject to the Brown Act?
Yes.
Okay.
That is it permissible for one of us, for example, let's say as we review in anticipation of the transportation element, if we conducted some analysis and we emailed the commission as a resident emails the commission, can we provide some articulation of our views ahead of the meeting?
I think that has to come from the director, not the...
I don't mean individually. I mean, if we emailed the secretary and she distributed it as a public record.
Right, yeah. So the typical process would be for a commissioner to, send questions or comments to the staff, and then the staff could...
Yeah, we don't want to be the vehicle for a meeting, an unnoticed meeting, so we don't really want to get input from different commissioners and then send that back out to other people. So the system that the secretary uses of gathering information from the commissioners and transmitting it to you or giving it to you on the day of the hearing is really our preferred arrangement. And in fact, the suggestion that you made that if anyone thinks of issues that they didn't raise this evening, they should send them to the staff. Right. That's ideal, because we will use those to frame the conversation and put in our staff report for your next meeting.
Okay. I was, take it for what it is, but I think it makes a lot of sense as we prepare for this meeting, at least from my perspective, to utilize, some living document, each person, I'm not a communal one, where you take your notes and prepare. And I don't know if it's possible to, like, if I prepare sort of my own analysis of some of the things that I think are important, can I come to the meeting and distribute that to my fellow commissioners? So at least they have, what I want to do is I want to encourage everyone to take advantage of an opportunity to not feel rushed and synthesize, as opposed to have to like come up with it on the dot. So if, for example, I wrote down my own notes, I could distribute that to commissioners at the meeting.
Absolutely. And I think we're all going to learn as we try this out for 1 or 2 meetings about the level of detail and the amount of effort we can really put into this in the time we have. Because, the time is not unlimited. We have to find that right, kind of level of detail. If we tried to go through every program and
No,
every
of course
policy,
not.
we'd never
No,
get
and I
done.
also think that sort of, the more we prepare in advance for each meeting, probably the more efficient we'll be. Anybody else? Please.
Just a quick comment about the straw polls. I remember we did this 2 years ago when Greg was chair, and it didn't really work very well. You can go back to those meetings. It was pretty much, they were too granular, and they were just looking, we were looking at each separate comment, and I think it was abandoned. So just knowing that experience, it may not work again here, but of course we can give it a try. But I remember that it failed back then, right? Here we have the policy level. If you just go through the policy by policy line item, then pretty much we can accomplish the goal and move expeditiously, which is pretty much the one of the objectives, and not lose the sight of the goal. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're done with this item number 2. Why don't we begin with, I want to staff get ready, and we begin with item number 3, the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park and adjacent commercial lots tentative map. Let me just reiterate, if there's speaker cards for this item, if anybody wishes to speak on this item, please fill out a speaker card and hand it to staff so that we can call it out. Talk about something that's been going on for years. It's finally here.
Excellent. Good evening. May I present? I'm Amy French, Chief Planning Official. I'm here to present the tentative map for the 6+ acre site. which houses the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park, or Manufactured Home Park. The site, let's see, here we go. The site is located in Barron Park. It has existing zoning of RM15, otherwise known as residential multifamily, 15 units per acre, and commercial neighborhood zoning. There are currently 5 parcels on this site. The proposal is to reduce it to 3 parcels. The site's on the corner of Los Robles and El Camino Real. This image shows the 3 parcels that are proposed. Parcel 1 would be a mobile home park known as Buena Vista Mobile Home Park. Parcel 3 is the gas station parcel. I'm trying to move this over. Next to El Camino Real. This parcel 3 would include existing mobile home units at the rear. The parcel 2 is entirely commercial, CN zoned. I should mention parcel 3 is split zoning, RM15 where the mobile homes are and CN where the gas station is. The proposal would provide an easement for access and utilities across parcel 2 from El Camino and across parcel 2 from Los Robles. The mobile home park currently has an entrance on Los Robles. The parcel currently on the mobile home park has existing trees, both within the park boundaries and along the right-of-way. There's no proposal to remove trees. There's no proposal to change zoning. There's no development proposed. There are no land uses proposed. This is a simple matter. The reason it's before the Planning Commission is because there are 6+ acres. Otherwise, it would just be a preliminary parcel map, a different process. The only adjustments that would need to be made to the mobile home park are to observe the new lot lines that are proposed, separating parcels 1 and 3 and parcels 3 and 2. As you can see, the easement along the back of the retail building would provide the 10-foot setback required by the zoning code. And I can say that the proposed easement will not affect the parking spaces on parcel 2. No impact there. So what's great about this? The housing is going to be preserved, affordable housing. Luckily, the Housing Authority, who is here tonight, represented by Flaherty Ward, is coming forward to purchase the mobile home park and improve the mobile home park, the existing units. The existing owner, Joe Gisser, would retain the commercial parcels on the front, fronting El Camino Real. And we are on a direct path to recordation to make sure that this deal goes through. The escrow closes on September 1st. It's a very quick timeline. There will be no displacements. Families that are in housing units will remain, including on the rear of the parcel 3, for up to 3 years. This happens to be the same lease term as the gas station. And our condition of approval in the record of land use action at places includes such a condition to ensure that this 3-year lease term, lease back to the Housing Authority, is observed. I should also note in the at places memo, there are 2 sheets shrunk down. The only change on those tentative map sheets is to indicate the dimension of 4.8 feet of easement along El Camino Real to ensure that we have the sidewalk width that's needed along El Camino Real. That's dedicated back to the city for public access. I'll just quickly breeze through some images here. We have, the neighborhood is single-family residences backing up to the park. We have RM30 across Los Robles and RM15, again, backing up to the park on the other side. And then we have, 1 and 2 story development primarily, and we have retail along El Camino, CN zoning. These are some images of the residential neighborhood context, the RM30 development. We have, you can see here, there are no sidewalks along Los Robles adjacent to the park. In the future, should redevelopment be proposed, that would be the time there would be improvements along this edge. But there is nothing proposed to date. The retail context is neighborhood commercial zoning. The retail building you can see here. We have a cell tower here in a fake magnolia, and we have sidewalks that begin here and continue on El Camino Real. These are some other images of the nearby commercial on El Camino. This is an image that just shows the proposed easement, a 20-foot easement to get, just as is there now, an easement to get to the mobile home park from El Camino Real. And that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here for questions. Staff is here to answer questions as well. I should note that we did receive an email today from Mr. Herb Borak, who has submitted a speaker card. And let's see if there's something else.
I'm hoping that I can take the director's prerogative and just jump in for a second before we hear from the Housing Authority representative. Again, Hillary Gittleman, the planning director. I personally want to thank Amy French. She's a senior member of our staff, and she's the one who gets these short time frame projects. We think this is a pretty simple one. It's just a map to preserve an existing condition, but it's an existing condition that we all treasure in Palo Alto. The city and the county have put a great deal of money into preserving the mobile home park, and this is one of the prerequisites for closing escrow and letting the authority actually follow through with the purchase. So we're hoping for the commission's support with this evening, and I want to thank Amy for jumping on this so fast. So we'll hear from the Housing Authority and then any member of the public who want to address the commission.
Yeah, let me just, before you begin, I have a speaker card also from but we're treating her as separately, right? She's not speaking as a part of the public comment. She's speaking as an applicant. Is that right? The Flannery Ward?
Yes. Yes.
Either one.
Yeah, so why don't we have you come up and speak as part of the presentation, and then...
Here or here?
There.
Is it on? Yep. Good evening, commissioners. I am Flaherty Ward. I represent the Santa Clara County Housing Authority. I just want to introduce myself, also reiterate big thank yous to Amy. While it is a simple task in theory, we have an expedited timeline to purchase the park while we have the funds available to us. That is why the close is September 1st. So a big thank you to Amy and her staff. And then we're looking forward to the purchase and preserving the park, so the residents, a lot of whom are here tonight, can remain in the park, in perpetuity. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Also with me tonight is Palo Hernandez. He's our land use consultant who was instrumental in getting the application submitted. So we're both here to field any questions you might have.
Okay, why don't, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just briefly, the funding, does it also include annual maintenance?
Yeah, so that's a big question, but yes, the residents pay space rent, so the park actually kicks off cash flow. We envision that there's going to be some upfront investment on the infrastructure that needs to happen. And we're hopeful that after that, the property, we're going to finance it in a way so that the property cash flows based on the rent that's kicked off from the space rents.
Okay.
That we realize that between now and then, there might be some infusion that's needed.
I just didn't know if every 3 years you needed X more just for ongoing maintenance.
Yeah, at this point, we're in the preliminary stages of developing the operating and income budget. A lot of those questions will be answered. We've had limited access to the site and the residents, so we're just kicking off those assessments to determine what the operating budget will look like, and we'll have more of those answers as we get into the process. But The Housing Authority operates, we have 30 assets in our portfolio, all multifamily housing throughout the county. It's something we're good at, something we're sensitive to. We spend a lot of time on our operating budgets to make sure that maintenance, security, upkeep, and stable housing is what's kept in mind.
Yeah, this is a wonderful outcome.
Okay. For her? Okay.
So just a quick question about the 8 units that are on the gas station parcel. So they can stay for 3 years, and then after that, I assume you want to absorb them into the parcel 1?
Yeah, so like for instance, we learned recently, and this was what we were hoping for, there's actually 12 vacancies on the site, either site vacancies where there's no structures or empty coaches. So the hope is by, improving the park, improving flow, we can absorb those coaches into the site easily.
So they won't be in the position of being...
Nobody is getting displaced.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody can stay. That's why the 3 years was negotiated, so that it gives us the time to pull them in. Yeah.
Okay. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't I invite Herb Borak to speak, and then I'll close the public comment, and then we can have a discussion, and if there are more questions for staff or the county representative, we can get back into that.
Okay, thank you. I attended the Board of Supervisors hearing 2.5 years ago in January 2015 to support the mobile home park remaining, rather than saying, as some people did, just have a site for affordable housing without an emphasis on the mobile home park. And I estimated that the cost would be $40 million. So I'm pleased that we've gotten to this point. I've provided you a letter at your places about my concern about zoning compliance, and that goes to the findings on the tentative map on both finding 1 and 4 as to whether it does comply with the zoning ordinance. The site was originally annexed to the city and already existed, and so has been allowed to continue even though the density is much more than the existing zoning. However, I don't believe you can just arbitrarily draw a line and say that whatever on one side of the line, since it's part of the entire mobile home park, suddenly now also complies with the zoning. And I provided you a suggestion of how to remedy that concern. Even if you agree that the existing proposal for 4.5 acres is entitled to keep what was there before, there's a question of what happens when the units from the adjoining parcel that's being created get moved over, unless the applicant is saying they're going to reduce the total number to what is on the 4.5 acre parcel. I'm not aware that the state overrides the zoning on mobile home parks, such as when another government agency owns land, such as like the Veterans Administration Hospital, and can build whatever they want. And in any event, if you accept the argument that what would be on the new parcel, 4.5 acres, is entitled to be there because it's there now, what about the units that are going to be moved within the next 3 years? Thank you.
Okay. So seeing no other speaker cards, I'm going to close the what is it? Public comment, and then open it up to commissioners to make comments or ask questions. Commissioner Cardes, do you want to start us off?
Sure, but I think that, thank you very much. So and Amy, thank you very much for presentation, and of course, kudos to you for attacking this problem. So I think that the question that Mr. Borak brought up is a very interesting one. So, and definitely suppresses the questions that I had. So could you help us to understand the core of this issue? I understand that right now, there's more units per existing zone that's zone designated, And then, once you explain this to us, could you just take us through the response from your side? Thank you.
Sure. Well, as I noted in the presentation, there will not be any zoning change. So the parcel 3, I should go back to that slide, will have the same number of housing units within the first 3 years. Should in the future Mr. Gisser wish to redevelop this, the back area is still zoned for housing. So, you know, in a redevelopment scenario, you know, density units per acre would apply. The same number of housing units are here today, and that would not change with this parcel map, or I should say tentative map. As I noted, this is not a development project. There is no change. I understand the gist of the concern, which is reduction of acreage, and, you know, what does that do to the housing units on the other side? It's not an issue for the parcel 1, parcel 3, there's no change, so it's not an issue for that one either. I did the review of parcel 3 to see if that was going to be a problem. It's not. Under today's zoning, there's no change in zoning. There's no proposal to remove those housing units.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, that under current condition, because there's no zoning change, it's pretty much there is no concern. However, if there was a new, we would be populating this lot with the mobile housing, then we would not be able to have as many of those homes on the RM15 for lot 3. Is this correct?
Well, that's not necessarily true. If, for instance, all of the mobile homes were to be removed and a new development came in with affordable housing, and in this case, I believe it's 100% affordable housing, there are, you know, density bonuses that allow you to increase beyond the maximum density in the underlying zone, and Hillary can comment on that.
Yeah, I don't want to avoid speculation about what might happen in the future. What's happening today is that we're preserving the existing homes. The subdivision enables that to happen. There is a non-conforming situation where there's more units on this parcel than would be allowed under the existing zoning, but it's not proposed to change. To the extent that the Housing Authority undertakes renovations in the future, they mentioned utility work and other site improvements, potentially removing some vacant coaches to put in the coaches from the other parcel. All of those things are going to require permits. They'll have to be reviewed at the time they're proposed. We can't really speculate today about what those site changes are because they haven't planned them. But we do know that what we are proposing here is consistent with our interpretation of the MAP Act and with CEQA. We don't think there's an issue, and while I appreciate Mr. Borok's input, we think that we're good to go on this evening.
Very good, thank you. But we always appreciate Mr. Borok's comments and his presence here. I just wanted to mention this. When there's going to be renovation, probably this. No, let me just talk to Amy, because otherwise we would have to reopen the hearing. So if there's going to be renovation, would the houses, and if the houses are possibly moved, I don't know if there would be, under renovation, there may be some movement of the houses within some boundaries. Would they have to comply with the setbacks? I believe that some of them are entering the setbacks.
Yeah, so for new parcel lines being created, then we would want the, you know, any relocated homes to observe the setbacks. For the existing non-conforming coaches that are within the setbacks, we're not going to have them relocate those. They're in an existing non-conforming state that we, you know, inherited from when the area was annexed back in the 1970s. We're not going to go and actively have all of those move. They probably wouldn't withstand such a move.
I understand. So let me maybe reformulate the question and maybe talk to the representative from the Santa Clara Housing Authority. So the question is like this: do you expect that any renovation would require movement of any houses? Yes, please. Where's Mike? Yes, please, if you could mind.
We don't know yet. We are still in the assessment and fact-finding stage of our due diligence to purchase the property. So it is really hard to speculate on what that could look like. But as I understand it, any major renovations that we do will have to come through the planning department as a land use application. I think at that time, we would get comments back on what requirements would be conditioned upon that approval. And we'd work with planning staff on trying to think of a thoughtful proposal on how to do all that. We know that there's non-conforming uses out there.
Okay, and then if it's, so now question back to Amy. So say that, that there may be a need to, because of the renovation, to move, to shift some of the houses that are on the lot. Would it be, would that require a need for an exception, zoning exception? Or it would be, or this would be resolved at the director's level?
Yeah, again, we can't speculate. We don't have a specific proposal in front of us. They just don't know what they're going to need to do to upgrade the site.
Okay, let me move that to some other questions. So that 4.5 feet setback along El Camino, I understand that that this would allow easement, that this would allow for 8 feet sidewalk.
It would allow it would meet the El Camino Real master plan that prescribes a certain setback. I can't tell you where the curb is related to the property line. I'm sorry, but they're ensuring that 4.8 feet easement along the front of that parcel. And that was, coming from our Public Works Department to ensure that we're meeting our plan lines that are shown on the El Camino Real master plan.
Yes, my question was getting to this point, which I hope that this is going to be the result of this easement, because as you know, we have 8 feet minimum of the sidewalk requirements at other areas, so probably this would be the same.
Actually, I would say if and when, let's say, a redevelopment were to come forward on those commercial parcels, we have our El Camino Real guidelines and the CN zone standards that ask for even more than 8 feet. So, it's a minimum for sidewalk, but there could be additional setbacks for any redevelopment. But there's no development proposed right now on those parcels.
Very good. Thank you very much. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Yes. I wanted to also thank Ms. French and Ms. Ward for the presentations today. It's appreciated. And I also want to acknowledge the number of residents that have come out so that it's reflected in the record when City Council reviews our transcript. I'm counting approximately 50 or so residents here. You're here with your families and some children, and it really is important that you're here, that we see you here, and it's definitely noted that you're here. Your presence is very much felt, and it's meaningful. So thank you for coming here and being a part of this process just by your presence alone. I did have some concerns about the future development of Parcel 3 as well, but as Hillary mentioned, we're not looking at that at this point, so we'll revisit that. This might not be within our purview, but if there is further development on Los Robles Avenue, I think parking in that area is really difficult, especially for Parcel 2. And so if there is going to be any parking developed, perhaps you can consider diagonal parking spaces or something in that area. I don't think I have anything else, so thank you very much.
So there are, I think, 117 structures, residential structures on presently, if that's right. So kind of what you're saying is that number of residential structures will be retained through grandfathering. Is that correct?
There may end up being some removal of some of the coaches because we don't know, about the building code compliance. We're going to have to be having a look at a lot of things out there. So we may, reduce the number of housing units in the short term, and we'll see. In the long term, we don't have proposal.
Can I just pile on there? I mean, I just want to be super clear. The purpose of the map is to enable the purchase of the site with all of the existing structures in their current locations, period. Then what's going to happen is that the new owner of the parcel, once it closes, is going to do an assessment of the site and what needs to be done to address utilities and other things. At that point, they will know better whether there are, for example, vacant coaches that can be removed so some of these other ones can be moved on, and whether there are other physical changes. What we'll have to do when they come in for permits for any of these future things that we don't know what they are, we'll have to review them for conformance with our codes and make sure they meet the building code standards and the planning standard, which is that you can't accentuate or make a non-conforming situation more non-conforming.
Right, but they would, through grandfathering, they would retain the right to have that number of units.
Correct.
That's what I was asking,
Correct.
I'm sorry. So I also appreciate Mr. Borak coming in, and I didn't have a lot of time to study his letter. Is there any additional benefit to the method that he's suggesting, or is it, I was not clear on it, so I just wanted to ask your opinion on that, because he's always full of good ideas.
I know. It sounds like Mr. Borak is proposing to rezone the site, so a legislative change that would happen concurrent with the map, and that's just really not something that the property owner or the purchaser had anticipated. It's a lengthy process, as you know, and it didn't seem necessary to basically perpetuate the existing condition.
And would that take too long to meet the requirement of the deadline?
Certainly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I would like to congratulate the county as well. I think everybody in this community is well aware of sort of what's been taking place and all the effort that's been made, and it's this pretty unique opportunity. And I'm thankful that the city also invested its own funds and is sort of achieving sort of a mutual goal here. So it's, I think this is a sort of unique and special event. We have a small role here in the review, but I'll make a motion now. To recommend approval to the City Council of the tentative map application based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval in the draft record of land use.
Second.
Okay. Would you like to speak to the motion at all?
You were eloquent.
Okay, thank you. Make sure that's on the record.
I said it very loudly.
Okay, well, let's take a vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's all in favor. It's unanimous. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for attending. And let's take a 5-minute break and begin with item number 4 after that. Thank you. I'm hoping staff is ready. Are you guys ready to begin? Let's do that. Let's reconvene this meeting and begin with item number 4.
Good evening, Commissioners. Claire Hodgkins, Project Planner. The proposed project is located at 3001 El Camino Real. And just a quick overview of the project. It includes 19,800 square feet of retail commercial space and 50 residential rental units. It's actually 2 buildings, so it includes 1 building along El Camino Real within the CS zone that's a mixed-use building with 30 units, and then there is a multifamily residential along Acacia Avenue that is in the RM30 zone. So just a little bit more about the project. The project site is currently 3 parcels that would be merged into 1, and that's actually part of a separate application for a preliminary parcel map. The site includes split zoning, so it's actually a CS zone, RM30 zone, and a portion of the site, a small portion, is zoned R1. And the site also includes split land use designations of service commercial, multifamily residential, and single-family residential. And it's currently developed with 2 buildings that total 9,100 square feet of retail commercial, surrounded by a surface parking area. And this just generally shows you the zoning, so you can see that small sliver of R1, the RM30, and then the CS zone at the front. So key considerations for tonight, the project provides multifamily residential housing on a housing inventory site, which fulfills a need for the city. It's also close to offices and transit. This use is consistent with the comprehensive plan vision for this area. Parking, the proposed project is providing 4 fewer parking spaces than required by the code for the site, which requires a director's adjustment. Staff has noted in the staff report that further consideration of the loading space is also needed. So that's something that will be resolved as we refine the plans prior to council. A design enhancement exception is required to allow the garage ramp to encroach into the setback. Although the DE is not subject to the PTC's purview, staff is noting this because it is relevant to the overall site design. So the site and design review process, the project is coming before the PTC because it's a housing project with more than 9 units and is therefore subject to site and design review, which requires PTC recommendation, ARB recommendation, and then council approval or decision. The project received preliminary feedback from the ARB at the end of last year, where design issues were discussed. Many of those design considerations have been addressed in the current plans, and a few outstanding items which were outlined in the report are still being revised and will be further discussed and reviewed by the Architectural Review Board prior to council issuing a decision on the project. So the PTC's focus tonight is on specific site and design findings, and after the applicant's presentation, I'll actually put those findings up for you guys. So with that, tonight staff is recommending that the PTC take the following actions. Consider the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, and recommend approval of the site and design application to the City Council based on findings and subject to conditions of approval included in the draft record of land use action. And with that, I'll turn it back to you guys to turn it over to the applicant.
Yeah, would the applicant please come up?
Good evening. My name is Tim Steele, and I'm with the Sobrato organization. Thank you, Commission Chair Alchek and the PTC Commissioners, for the opportunity to present this proposed mixed-use project at 3001 El Camino tonight. I would also like to thank staff for all of their hard work on this application and express their support for the findings and the recommendations within their staff report. I am pleased to present to you a project that started its design process with my directive of being compliant with the existing zoning designations, a refreshing approach to a project in Palo Alto. This has had its challenges since this site has 3 different zoning designations and 3 street faces. However, as our architect presents to you tonight, I think you will appreciate that we've developed a careful, thoughtful design project that has accomplished these goals and more. The mixed-use project provides 50 new, well-amenitized, smaller rental apartments with an average of 750 square feet and nearly 20,000 square feet of retail. I do want to point out that the CS zoning allows for commercial above and beyond the replacement retail of a total of 20,000 feet, with which we have 9,100 square feet existing. And in this case, knowing that the city is very interested in preserving retail and providing for more, we are committing that all of the commercial space within this project would stay and become retail only. Also on the parking note, we are proposing that 2 complementary uses share a very small portion, a total of 4 out of 189 parking spots of parking allocation, which is supported with a shared parking analysis provided by our traffic engineer. Additionally, the CS parking garage is designed to provide for 14 future parking spaces to be added with lifts should the project want to consider restaurants which have a higher parking ratio requirement. A lifts would be added to the secured residential parking area, and a security fence would be slid over to maintain the exact same amount of residential parking within a secured area and providing for additional commercial parking in the commercial unsecured spaces. So with no further delay, let me introduce my design team. I have Rob Steinberg, our architect, Nick Samuelson with Exardo Partnership, our landscape architect, Nectarius Matthew with Kieran Wright, our civil engineer, and Jane Clayton with Hexagon, our traffic engineer. And finally, Robert Trucini, who's in the audience, and myself with the Sobrato organization, the applicant. And with that, if there's no questions yet, I'll introduce Rob Steinberg to present the rest of the project. Thank you.
Do the slides. Just roll it. Okay. Good evening. My name's Rob Steinberg. I'm with Steinberg Architects, and let's start with a view of the landscape site plan. And maybe a good place to begin, actually, is identifying a few of the site opportunities that we see. You heard that it is 3 smaller parcels merged into one, and from an architect's perspective, that's good, a lot of flexibility. The flip side of that is that each parcel has its own very unique zoning requirements. And on top of that, when you put these together, there are 3 different design guidelines that were instrumental in the design of the project. There's the El Camino Real guidelines, there's the South El Camino Real guidelines, and then there's the Cal Ventura area specific plan. So a lot of input. The goal of those plans is really, one of the key goals is to activate the street, to make it pedestrian friendly. And one of the unique features of this site, as you can see from the drawing, is the middle of the site, the grades come up almost 2 feet, 20 to 24 inches. And so it sort of pushes the activity to the flatter part of the site, to the corners. And that's a very nice opportunity for us to create gathering spaces, plazas, and areas for socialization. Yikes, what happened? I lost my, sorry.
That's okay.
It's very sensitive.
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry about that.
Can I? That would be way better. Okay, so In regards to the guidelines, we've moved the buildings to the edges, to the streets, to address the streets, which results in a benefit that we're moving the bigger buildings as far away from the single-family residence as possible. We've tried to create a building that's porous with a number of entrances, both to the retail and to the residential. And on both corners of Olive and Acacia, we've created plazas that would be open to the public. And as you move around onto Acacia, we've taken the two lobbies from each of the residential buildings and we've put them side by side so that there's a sense of entry to the entire project. We have thought quite a bit about the traffic and being very sensitive to the single-family homes on Olive. And so if you look at the diagram, you can see that all of the residential parking is coming from Acacia. It comes in at two locations, it goes into the garages, and it exits out onto Acacia. The retail traffic is allowed to enter from Olive, but not exit. So all of the exiting goes out to Acacia. So I think that the impact to Olive from the traffic would be quite minimal. This is a view of the Acacia corner. The first floor is recessed so that activities inside can spill out. As you look to the right down Acacia, you can see that the buildings are stepping down in height as you move away from El Camino Real. And you can see the introduction of natural materials or wood-colored materials that are really trying to respond and pay homage to the redwood trees on the other side of El Camino. We took a similar kind of strategy on Olive, except that it's lower. Instead of being 50 feet, it's 35 feet. There's room there, again, for gathering and outdoor dining. We've tried to identify the entrances with the warm wood material so that it's inviting. In order to be sensitive to the existing neighbors on Olive, we, as I mentioned, try to minimize the activity there. On Acacia, we took a very different kind of posture. We tried to develop a shared pedestrian vehicle motor court that was faced by the restaurant, by both the lobbies, so that we were trying to create another node of activity and space is on different edges of the site. So we are excited about the work that we're showing you, the collaboration with staff, with the ARB, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, I have one card here. Sandy Lockhart. Is this for item number 4? What? Did you, are you Sandy Lockhart? Would you like to speak? You'll have five minutes.
I'm Sandy Lockhart. My address is 405 Olive Avenue, and I just needed to comment about this project. I have watched and stood by while our end of town is being eaten up by developments. I'm disappointed that you all are contemplating yet another 50 housing units. This one directly adjacent to Olive Avenue, which is a street of small single-family houses. The impact of such a huge project, not to mention for that property's lot size, with such a high occupancy, is untenable, and yet another rude response to our attempts to get zoning changes for our own R1 houses. So Palo Alto wants us to keep our R1 zoning, and yet you contemplate huge housing projects on our doorstep and at our back doors. You want us to remain as low-cost R1 housing and at the same time inundate us with more noise, more cars, more residual parking, and more people. I'm not at all convinced that Palo Alto can handle the changes. I've seen poor follow-up to requirements for obtaining permits in this city. And here's a story for you. There was a time when we in our neighborhood begged and pleaded then HP to clean up the sidewalk strip, which had been a mess for years, and finally they did, and it was nice for a while. But as with other approved beautification projects, Chipotle is the other one I can think of, the ground cover has mostly died, and we're back to ugly. And I have a picture that I've given you all. That's what it looks like now. The point is, there's no follow-up by the city. I've heard our neighborhood described as blighted, and that's pretty insulting. We have cute houses with more children than I have seen in 40 years of living there. We care about our neighborhood. We know our neighbors. We don't want monstrous housing developments engulfing us. You're contemplating a devastatingly huge project, as you did with Park Plaza, where it seemed to take years and redesigns only to end up with a really big, really ugly building. And Park Plaza has not even been able to fill their vacant units yet. This proposed building is the gateway to our street. And I appreciate the attempt at making that nice. The small businesses that used to service the area, like auto parts stores, the auto mechanic, the bicycle shop, have been forced to leave. And in its place, we have a huge building, more people, more exercise rooms, more cars, and in the end, likely more parking on our street. I fear for our street to be devoured by enormity. Lack of oversight, more cars, and yet again, no follow-up by the city for the niceties granted to appease us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Typically, the applicant has time to speak again at the conclusion of public comments. Do you wish to make any more comments? Okay. Well, then I'll assume you're generally available to answer any questions. Okay. Commissioner Gardis, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So, help me understand this. This is Palo Alto, and we have a 50-feet project, which is truly large and overwhelming for the neighborhood. And we have one speaker card. It doesn't feel like Palo Alto. Something is missing. So I'd like to understand, has any process been conducted, and was neighborhood polled about this project? Why the audience is only one? Thank you.
Sure. We have our standard noticing, so when the project was initially applied for, both this project as well as the preliminary parcel map noticing went out to all of the neighbors within 600 feet for both of those projects. And noticing for each hearing, so when we went to preliminary ARB in November, noticing was sent out again. Noticing was also sent out for this project, or for this hearing, to 600 feet. And also a separate notice was also sent out to 600 feet for the ISM&D. So there's actually been 5 total notices that have gone out within 600 feet. It's also been noticed in the local newspaper for the ISM&D as well, and the hearings. So.
Yeah, and I saw it on the front page of the local newspaper yesterday, but this was yesterday. So how many residents live within the 600 feet radius?
I can't say off the top of my head, but obviously there's a number of them all along Olive Avenue that live within that area. Yeah, I couldn't say off the top of my head exactly how many.
We're talking about dozen or dozens or hundreds? I don't know.
Well, we can look it up, but, and we'll get back to you. Why don't we continue the conversation? I mean, I think this is maybe an interesting phenomenon that we're not seeing a big outpouring of criticism for this proposal. It is completely consistent with the zoning for the area, and it's something that I think many of us think the region really needs, which is more rental housing. So maybe it's an omen of things to come.
It could be. Very well, it could be, right? I just don't care about the number, but I'm just surprised, just giving that typically projects of this size, they lure audience to this room. And I remember one project when we discussed Mercedes-Benz dealership that was also going 50 feet. And actually lack of the audience caused that we missed some of the very important issues that came up later on at the council. And then, I considered that this meeting wasn't at one of our best meetings, because this commission should be providing expertise and input and comments to the council, and this wasn't best our performance. So I am always concerned, because the audience provides us with very valuable inputs. So I was missing something. That's my comment was from this area. So let me understand. Just before I move on, are we're gonna have a couple of rounds, right?
You may speak as much as you'd like.
No, I don't want to do it. I just want to make sure that there's a fair distribution of the time.
If you have more comments after your first.
Yes, please.
If you would like, regarding the mailing radius, the 600 feet does go about 12 houses down Olive Avenue, and then so to the kind of northeast, and then to the northwest, it goes all the way out to Page Mill Road. So those are the main single-family homes that we would have captured in this mailing radius. And then across El Camino, there would have been some properties captured as well.
Okay. I would be interested just to know why there is no reaction to this. But well, we shall see, of course. So let me just ask about. Let me ask this question. So in one of the materials, there is a response that justifies context-based development. I don't remember which page it was, but nonetheless, if I remember correctly, you say that the distance from the houses that are along Acacia Avenue to the houses along Olive is that great that no impact is on those houses. So I'd like to ask a general question, because this is a very important concept in the municipal code. And there are different camps in Palo Alto. Some may justify building up to the height. Some may say that context-based development requires us to build accordingly to the relationship with the adjacencies, and then and the height is only a cap. So depends which party you talk to. Pretty much there is a different interpretation, very important, of the code. So I'd like to understand more about analysis that were done to satisfy the context-based development for this area.
So I guess to start out with, you're speaking to height, and I think if I heard your comment correctly, what you're saying is that it may not always be appropriate to build up to height. I think in this case, I want to clarify what the applicant has done is built up to height along El Camino Real, which is actually encouraged in our El Camino Real design guidelines. However, they have stepped down to 35 feet where the project is located within 150 feet of the residential areas. I want to also note that this project, specifically and especially the mixed-use development along El Camino Real, is substantially set back, much, much further than what is typically required to meet both setback requirements and the daylight plane requirements for this project. And I know that the project also is set back enough to meet daylight plane requirements for the 35-foot building along Acacia as well. So with respect to height, I think the project is very consistent with what we're looking for, both in determining what's consistent with the South El Camino Real design guidelines, but also keeping in mind that we are close to adjacent single-family residences, and it respects that fact. I guess in terms of the additional analysis related to specific aspects of the context-based design criteria, there is attachment F, goes through each of the criteria and why we felt that each one was consistent. So I don't know if there are any other specific ones you want me to speak to, or?
I was specifically speaking about the relationship of the development along Acacia to the houses along Olive. The other areas along Camino, I think that they may be handled appropriately, but then there is a relationship and entrance of that housing to that residential area. It's overwhelming if you look at the elevations from the Olive Side Avenue on these drawings. Pretty much some of those houses are nearly 2.5 up to 3 times of the height of the houses on the other side of the wall.
So I do want to clarify that the Acacia Avenue building is set back again substantially from where the actual property lines are. So where a 10-foot is required, there's 28 to 48-foot setback. And is also consistent with the daylight plane requirements for those properties. And I guess I would also note that each of those single-family residences also have a 20-foot setback. So we're talking about a 68-foot setback from these houses. And in staff's opinion, that setback provides, a sufficient setback to kind of provide landscaping all along the property line, but also to provide that transition between the two sites.
Thank you, Claire, for this review. So personally, I just don't feel I think that the criteria along the context-based development are not specific enough to provide sound judgment, and then as you may have and staff may have opinion, somebody else may have other opinion. And then not having more concrete measures pretty much leaves the discussion at with the majority of the vote or at some non-consensus, I would say. So I pretty much, when I look at the elevation from Olive, I disagree. I believe that pretty much development overwhelms the neighbors, which I will prove later on when we're going to speak. I just wanted to raise the point that I think that's not enough analysis, concrete analysis were done to pretty much justify this. So let me touch upon one other major point that I would like to raise, and then I just give up my mic to the colleagues. So I have a question about how we arrive with with one single lot for this development. So initially there were 3 separate lots, and then there must have been some consolidation or rezoning of those 3 to pretty much I mean, I think that, let me just take it back. I think that when the owner acquired those properties, then pretty much those 3 became one property, and the lines subdividing this property were merged. Is this correct?
No, so they're actually applying right now for a preliminary parcel map that will also go to council at the same time as this project that will merge the 3 parcels. So just to clarify, so the site right now, there are, I have it up on here. Here.
It's on page 46.
Okay.
It's the discussion about
So
the
this,
parcel map.
I mean, this basically shows, so the site hasn't been rezoned in any way. It just happened to be kind of cross zoning, so it's split zoning. So the 3 parcels are 3 along the front of Acacia, and 1 along the front, along the front of El Camino, and one of the ones along the front of El Camino runs all the way back. So this same property owner owns a lot of property within that area. They haven't rezoned it in any way or created split zoning or anything on this site.
But they are in the process of consolidation into one large property.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So,
yeah.
so I just wanted to check on the process, right? So now I have a question that I was getting to, Albert. So the question is to you. That's important in terms of the overall development. What tools we have at our disposal to intrude into the consolidation process like this? And then let me just give you this as an example. I may make this argument that this is in the interest of the town to have 2 separate lots as opposed to 1 lot. And I can just give you with the argument why it would be interest of the town. So if we tend to put those lots together, then it's going to be under 1 ownership, and then the competition is going to decrease, the architectural variety will decrease, number of some factors would be subdued because of this process. So I was looking for understanding how we can, at the time of the consolidations like this, how we can present this town's interest, if you would agree that this could be in the town's interest, and then have 2 separate lots, as one along El Camino and the second one along Acacia, as opposed to 1 lot. And then just to before you respond, right? You may also imagine that that if there were 2 lots, there would be a variety of different development. Then if there is in times of a crisis, if one owner has economic problems, then the other may stay afloat. I think that it would be much better for the competition and for the development in general. So if you could please respond to this question.
So lot mergers are handled under, just like subdivisions are handled under Title 21 of our municipal code, and in both cases there are code requirements that need to be met and findings. In this case, there are findings that will need to be made before the parcel map can be approved. It's very similar to any other discretionary approval that we have, but if we are able to make the findings, the property owner has a right to merge their lots.
So if I understood you correctly, we have, because it's a discretionary process, we have a right to propose that as opposed to one large lot, they would merge or rezone into, or merge them into two separate lots, right?
We don't have unlimited discretion. It's all about whether or not the findings can be made and what's necessary to make those findings. And in this case, they are fairly straightforward. I don't think that there's no proposal to have two separate lots before us. And I don't want to get into a hypothetical situation.
Could I maybe interject something?
Yes,
I mean,
please.
just setting aside the question of the map, I mean, these parcels are under single ownership already.
I was going to ask the same question.
And the commission is here to evaluate the project under a site and design process, which is a quasi-judicial matter. So you're reviewing an application that's been provided to you. It's not a legislative act, so this isn't like a rezoning where you have a lot of discretion to impose what you think the public good might be and extract public benefits. This is an application we're reviewing against the standards that Clara has analyzed in the report. And so I think, while the design issues you've raised, are interesting and we should explore those further, the question of can the site be this or the site be that? I mean, they've walked in the door with a proposal which we are evaluating. And I think it would be good to think of it in that context.
I totally understand the scope and I totally understand the purview. I was using this example because we had some discussions in the past, like 2 years ago, and I just wanted to raise it up because it's a good example, I think, right? I know that this is not the objective of this meeting, but in retrospective of the comprehensive plan, I just wanted to raise this issue that maybe my colleagues find interesting to consider. So, I hope that we can come back to it at some other time. I still think it's worth exploring from the purpose of interest of this town. So thank you very much for now. I will return with other comments later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Lanning.
Yes, I mean, our purview is relatively narrow here. And I know we want to get to Section 3, where we have to review those. So I presume comments can be made on that as well. But just before I do that, you do mention that the shared parking adjustment and the design enhancement, which is not in our purview. Can we just get a couple sentences as to why those exceptions are, needed, just to inform us?
Yeah, of course. So the parking adjustment is for 4 fewer spaces than, they're providing 4 fewer spaces than what's required by code. I know that the applicant has looked into a number of different options of the layout. I think that a big part of the constraints on the project related to the fact that there was this split zoning on the site. So when you have split zoning, each portion of the site needs to be developed so that it meets all zoning requirements for all of the portions of the site within that zoning code. So even though the lot is being merged, it's almost each portion is still treated separately and has to meet all setback requirements for that portion of the site. So that provided some additional constraints that we wouldn't normally see for a site of this size. With that in mind, they're requesting the parking adjustment for 4 fewer spaces. I know that we don't have the parking management plan ready for review yet. The applicant is still working on that as we kind of have gone through this process and as we're refining it prior to council's decision. However, that has been discussed in detail with the Transportation Division, and they felt strongly that based on the number of retail spaces available and the number of residential spaces, that shared parking adjustment would not be an issue at all. The other design enhancement exception is for the location of the ramp within the required setback. And so the reasoning for that is there, again, a lot of site constraints related to the split zoning on the lot. There were also constraints in designing so that you are moving the building away from the residential and also up against El Camino for the El Camino Real design guidelines. In locating all of in the way that the buildings are located, and also in the overall circulation and the goal of reducing traffic onto Olive Avenue, the ramp was located, had to be located within the setback. So it's 5 feet into the required 10-foot setback.
Okay. Mixed use is good. We need that. And more housing units are essential. We really need that. 50-foot limits are legal, but I noticed that in the ARB minutes, there were comments from both speakers as well as the ARB members that we have to be careful of the walled canyon effect. And that's not just because of this building going up, but if they went up everywhere, there'd be a lot of walled canyons. Or someone else called it massing along El Camino. So that's there, it's in front of us, and it has to be addressed. There are also some references to parking as being too tight, so that might have been adjusted since the, I think it was the January 16, no, it must be later than that. The document you have here for the ARB meeting, that might have been adjusted by now. November 16. So then, I don't know, that's all I have to say on that. But then going over to this section 3, the one question that I had was on objective C, environmental design, ecological balance, references encouraging pedestrian and bicycle activity. Is that just because of the circulation of the plan and there's some wonderful open space for people inside of there? But what's the connectivity that has you calling out pedestrian and bicycles?
Sorry, do you want to say something? As you mentioned, I think it's in part because of the way that the project has been designed along the El Camino Real frontage. In the area right now, it's really just surface parking lots. There's some buildings that are set back further than what we typically would be looking for on El Camino Real. So the proposed project looks to encourage pedestrian activity in the sense that it's providing that retail space, it's providing entrances along El Camino Real. It's providing bicycle parking in those areas where it wasn't before. And the project is also, as part of the project, as part of the mitigation under CEQA, the project would be providing a pedestrian crosswalk across El Camino Real over towards Palo Alto Square, which was identified as a need to really reduce the pedestrian distance that has to be traveled. Right now, you have to go all the way up to Page Mill to get over to there, so it reduces the travel time. I know that a number of people had spoken to me, not really specific to this project, but talking about coming down Olive Avenue, and it's sometimes used as a bike cut through, and so having that crossway across El Camino Real would be a benefit.
That was a very helpful answer. Thank you. And then just below that, talk about several trees on site are planned to be removed. Those would be replaced in kind. What does that phraseology mean in terms of size?
I'm not sure which page, but that's a good question.
It's under Objective C, page 57 of our packet.
Yeah, I guess what I meant by in kind was really just that they were being replaced in general, so I think it went, I'm trying to remember the number of trees that are, I think there was like 140 trees being put in, and maybe like 20 to 30 being removed.
It's the size and the canopy that I'm asking about.
Right,
Relative to environmental design and ecological balance.
Is a landscape architect here by any chance? Okay. Be helpful. Thank you.
Nick Samuelson from the Casardo Partnership. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but usually we work with Dave Doctor, and there's mitigation numbers that we have to come up with based on what is considered a heritage tree that we'd be taking out, which I don't think we had any in the back, so we didn't have any redwoods or oaks that we were planning to take out. But the main trees that we would, we're keeping the street trees on El Camino. That's another tree that would be considered protected by the city. And then there's some trees along the back portion along the
So is the intent to go the minimum amount required by
No,
Doctor?
we design it with what we think is appropriate for the amount of trees, and that's since it's a parking lot, we're putting in a lot more than what is currently there. So, we've along that back side, we have a bunch of evergreen trees that we're planning to put in. We've met with Dave Doctor and talked about the species that we're planning to put in back there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me start out by welcoming the team here, and I just want to note that I thought that this packet and specifically this set of plans was really excellent. I don't know that I've seen a set of plans from Steinberg in front of this commission since I've been on it, but I think that was. I don't know that we always get such a full set, and it was really nice to get such a full set, so thought through. I also want to acknowledge that I've heard that the applicant has been very flexible. I'm going to take a minute to sort of talk about that. I know that, we often, when we think of property owners, we think of residents. Sometimes we don't think of corporations as property owners. But in this particular instance, this corporation owns property in Palo Alto. And I'm excited that, I am happy, let me put it that way, to have heard that you have made a significant effort to sort of work through the problems with staff. And they have at least indicated to me that there's been a sort of an aggressive effort to work through the challenges and figure out the best way. Particularly, I'll give you an example, this issue with the restaurant. You're proceeding with a retail-oriented parking design. The idea that you are thinking ahead in the event of potentially coming back and asking for the use of a restaurant and attempting to identify how you could accommodate that parking intensity increase suggests that that you're essentially being forthright and with the sort of what is a complex process of developing a parcel and thinking through all the potential consequences, or I should say opportunities. So I think I've said enough with that. I want to acknowledge a few things. Does staff know the number of units that we were allocated by the
number of units in our entire arena allocation?
Yes.
It was close to 2,000 units.
2,000. Do we have any idea how many we've developed? How many have been developed in this calendar year?
We do, actually, because we do an annual report to
What
the
is that
state.
number?
I think we've done 300 or something like that
300
already.
out of 2,000. So
And we're only a couple years into the period, so we're not doing that bad so far.
Not that bad. And this represents essentially 50 units, right? And that represents nearly 20% of what we've already developed. That's fantastic. I'm very excited that we had an opportunity to review this project. I'm really happy to see that there are projects, especially on El Camino in this transit-oriented area, that are coming through. I want to identify, I don't want to sound insensitive to your concerns, but we should acknowledge that as a city, collectively, we have identified this area as one exactly suitable for what's being proposed. And I just want to articulate that mixed-use buildings are encouraged within this specific area of the site along El Camino, and that housing is highly encouraged within the area due to the project's proximity to public transit. It's identified in our housing element as a housing allocation site, and in fact, by this unique lot merger, they're going to actually put more units on the site than we thought possible. It's compatible with adjacent uses and places for housing in close proximity to office, commercial, recreation, and retail. And the proximity to the Caltrain and the bus stops is exactly the sort of, we talk about housing a lot on this commission, and this is exactly, what I think, at least I have been yearning for. It's really a breath of fresh air to have a project that is meeting some of these needs. I'm not exactly sure. I want to just address something. I have to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not sure I understood 10% of what you were saying. I think the notion that there could be competition, all of that discussion seems very assumptive. The same owner could own 10 lots. It wouldn't matter if they were different or unified. They could own both parcels and develop both, and this notion of competition or growth or whatnot, I don't know that makes any difference. So you're welcome to sort of continue that dialogue, but I didn't understand how any of that was sort of relevant to the notion of whether we combine whether the parcels combination, should be granted or not. I think more importantly, the question is whether or not that request makes sense and helps us achieve the other goals that are sort of set out specifically for this area, and I think it does. I want to also acknowledge something here. I think the lack of opposition shouldn't be, we shouldn't assume that the lack of, look, I think there's one fair assumption about the lack of presence here by potentially individuals who oppose this project, and that is that they don't necessarily acknowledge that the greatest opportunity to participate in this process is at the commission level. And residents may feel like the greatest opportunity to participate is at the city council level because they're the ultimate decision makers, regardless of what we recommend. That may be one reason why no one showed up, but I think another safe assumption is that this project isn't particularly bothersome to the community. In fact, maybe the community supports it. I want to commend the applicant on what I think is what has evolved into a great design and project. I hope that you continue to, I hope as you participate in greater developments in this community, this approach that you've taken on this time is something that you continue to take on. I think it's an important part of the process. I have no conflicts with making the findings in Section 3 that need to be made. And I will obviously not make a motion now, but when that motion, if and when that motion is made, I will be supporting it. So I'll pass it on to you.
I just had one question, and then I'll probably want to circle back when we're complete. It's CS or SC? Because in your report you wrote service commercial, so I just want to confirm that it's CS, and I did look in the glossary of our comp plan, and I don't see it defined. So if you can please go over what is encompassed by CS.
Yeah. So the initials in the zoning are CS, but in the comp plan designation, land use designation, it's service commercial.
And can you please define that and please include a definition in the comp plan?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I'd like the definition.
Hold on one second.
I just want to know what it entails.
You're
types
looking
of
for the
services.
comp plan definition or the zoning?
Just tell me what that includes. I don't know. All I'm saying is a word, 2 words, and I just don't know what it means beyond that, as far as that designation goes. If there's examples or however you want to enlighten me.
Yeah, when we talk about the comp plan and upcoming meetings, you can find the definitions in the land use element. It's actually in the narrative section of the land use element. It describes what's allowed in each of the land use categories. So service commercial is there, and I'm reading from the proposed comp plan, so it's a little different possibly than what's in the current comp plan, but it's facilities providing citywide and regional services and relying on customers arriving by car. These uses do not necessarily benefit from being in high-volume pedestrian areas, such as shopping centers or downtown. It has some typical uses. It says in some locations, residential and mixed-use projects may be appropriate.
What page is that?
You get the idea. It's page L24 in the June 30th version that you saw. And I really don't think that definition has changed since the existing comp plan.
Okay. I'll just take a look at that and come back after Commissioner Suma goes.
I do. So I have some questions and comments. And one, I just wanted to clarify, we're doing a lot merger, but the underlying zonings are staying separate, correct? So we're not changing the RM30 to CS. Okay. I just wanted to make that clear because I think there's a big distinction between that in terms of planning and what goes on. In general, I think this is a project that it's hard to make a lot of legal findings that it's not compliant with our code. However, I do agree with some of the earlier comments that I think the back building, the RM30 building in particular, would sort of overwhelm the Olive houses from Olive Street. And that's a concern. That being said, if it's legal, I don't know what kind of leeway we have, just like to get it on the record. And I think that when we talk about developing somebody's neighborhood that is fully occupied by people who have lived there some long time and some new neighbors, it sounds aggressive. It may be the case that some sites, especially along El Camino, are more densely developed in the Ventura neighborhood, but I think we want to be careful about how we state it, because I do think it sounds like an assault on one neighborhood, which I'm sure is no one's intention. So I wanted to ask staff about the mixed-use parking exemption. Typically, I've seen that done with commercial and residential mixed uses, and I think the general assumption there is that the residents are gone during the day in general, and the businesses are gone at night and on the weekend in general. Do we have other examples of residential and retail mixed parking exemption uses, and have we found it as successful as we would like it to be?
So a couple things. I don't have any specific examples off the top of my head about specific examples where we've done shared parking with retail, but I had discussed in detail with multiple people in our transportation division about how that would work and what the typical peak hourly points are for retail uses and residential uses, and they felt that it would not be an issue to provide the space reduction, which I think it was like 2%. They felt was very minimal. And I'm actually going to turn it over because we actually have the traffic engineer who's working on the parking management plan here, so she might be able to provide some additional information.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jane Clayton from Hexagon Transportation Consultants. So with regard to the shared parking, there's actually 3 elements that are being shared: the residential, the retail, and the residential guests. The 4 spaces that are not being provided are actually spaces that would be allocated to guests. The Urban Lands Institute that provides the information that everybody in the traffic engineering community uses to determine when the peak demand is for shared parking. The demand for residential guests is in the evenings, 7 o'clock on. It's very low demand for residential guest parking during the daytime. So there is a real offset, which is a good thing for shared parking, between when retail needs the spaces, when guests need the spaces, and when residential. The peak demand in the shared parking says the peak demand would occur in the early evening, and it would be for the CS zoned area, 151 spaces, and the applicant is providing 152. So based on the tables that are typically used, there is adequate parking.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we have such a parking problem that really plagues people in Palo Alto right now that I just like to ask these questions, and I want to be specific because I think there may be something going on in Palo Alto that isn't the general case all over America. The other thing is that the parking lot, I made a site visit this morning and a couple of other times, and the parking lot is pretty full. So maybe I missed it if there was an analysis of who's using that parking now and where they're going to park. I believe it's not Fry's, but business people in the Fry's complex. So has that been accommodated?
So I want to note a couple things, and then I will turn it over to the applicant because I know that they did have people go out there and take a look at how that was being used. But I do want to note that staff has looked at the adjacent uses, and each of the adjacent uses is fully parked for their own use. So I think that staff felt that we don't have a lot of leeway, I guess, to require that this parking be provided elsewhere. I guess I'll turn it over to the applicant first to kind of speak to where people were kind of headed to in their analysis. So.
Thank you, Claire. Currently, we don't have a security guard on the Fry's parking lot. The Fry's parking lot, by the way, supports about 200,000 square feet of space, whereas Fry's itself is about 80,000 square feet. Fry's retail access and parking is actually on the other side off of Portage. So the parking that's on this side of the Fry's building is supporting more of the other uses within that building.
Yeah.
Fry's sits in the middle. So what happens is, so it means both ends of that long building are where the uses on this side of the building are. And because the Playground Global is at this end, they tend to park the most convenient spot, and we aren't managing what areas are being parked within the overall parking lot. But if you drive to the middle and to the park end of that parking lot on that side, it's underutilized. The second is we did do a monitoring of the parking for about, was it 6 weeks, I believe, where we had a person out there every single day watching every single person that parked in that lot and where they went. And the bulk of them go to the Equinox Gym, which is not part of our property, not owned by our property. And unless we had somebody on site every day, we put up signs, we tried to manage it. We had the security guard out there for those 6 weeks trying to tell them not to park there. But we can't every day police that parking lot. But we think the parking is being burdened in that area, not by our project, but actually by our adjacent property owner's project.
Thank you. So I had a couple questions about the excavation and dewatering and the effect on neighbors, because it will have to be dewatered, is that correct?
Dewatering may be required. Let me see.
I have so many questions, sorry.
You want to speak to that? Yeah.
If I may, currently we're only going down about 18 feet at the most for the footings and so forth, and water table is below that level at this point. However, the condition of approval that's being proposed would require us to go through Public Works for any dewatering. and we would follow those conditions of approval if, in fact, we discover any kind of water on site.
Because I also note that this is a part of the COE plume, so it's a little more complicated then, and people are also very interested in dewatering issues right now in Palo Alto. So, and staff would probably know this. Does the plume go under the residential areas nearby and adjacent?
Yes, I believe it does. Yeah.
So I guess the answer is if they need to do dewatering, there'll have to be a soil study and an understanding of how that whole thing will work.
Yes, for the dewatering, our Public Works Department would be watching over that. There would be sampling of any water taken out and, cleaning as necessary. As far as the future development of the residential, we do have in the environmental documents that there would be vapor barriers to ensure that, no future residents are impacted.
Thank you. And then I know that DEE is not under our purview, but you wanted us to opine about it. And I think in this case, I do not think it's a DEE. It's my personal opinion when you read a description of what a DEE can be used for. And I think in this case, given all the merits of this project, providing housing, et cetera, I would be much more comfortable with a project that didn't try to, wedge itself in, but just actually made a building that didn't ask for that intrusion into the setback near resident R1 home, and just found a way to reduce the square footage enough only just so you could fit and have the circulation in the basement and all that work. I think that would be an appropriate thing in this situation. And the other thing I wanted to say is I very much appreciate 50 more residential units to contribute to our 2,000 that we need, 300 of which we've built. But I do think it's disappointing when projects choose to pay in lieu fees instead of providing on-site below market rate housing, because of those 300 units we've achieved, how many are below market rate?
Oh, it's important to note this is rental.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It doesn't apply to rental housing.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify that, I think out of the 300 units, actually a good percentage have been affordable because of that Stanford project, the Mayfield project that just opened, is 70 units, I think.
Thank you.
But they don't have to pay in lieu fees, they're paying an impact fee. It's rental housing.
I apologize, I made a mistake.
Yeah, it's rental housing, so we can't require the affordable units.
That's right, I think I was just confused. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to ask, I noticed also that there's behind the Olive Street houses, in what's kind of the R1 maybe portion, there's a berm, an existing berm with mature trees. I also share some concern that those mature trees are providing a lot of privacy, and that any new trees be large enough to create a privacy and a canopy, and maybe even those could be saved, I don't know. So that's it. Thank you.
Oh, he was going to speak to it.
Would you guys want to hear from the landscape architect on that, or?
Oh, yeah. If I couldn't tell from the plans how big those or what they were.
They're actually underneath the size that's considered a protected tree, so they're smaller than 8 inches, and I think in a trunk diameter. So we consider them smaller trees. And so we're taking those out because it's on a berm. We can use that area for a stormwater treatment and to create some outdoor spaces. And then we're putting in a whole line of new evergreen trees along the whole back area. So the idea is we're putting in a new barrier along the whole side.
And how big will they be when you put them in?
When they go in, they'll probably be about 12 feet tall with what we have now. And that can be adjusted with.
Okay, because it doesn't seem like they would provide the same privacy as the existing, there's some kind of evergreen pine there now on the berm.
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of pines and some redwoods back
Okay.
there now. Yeah, but instead of having a continuous, right now it's like a sporadic grouping of the trees, and this would be more of a continuous barrier that we'd be putting in. But unfortunately, where the berm's placed right now, it takes out any possibility of having stormwater treatment or any kind of usable outdoor space back there.
Okay, thank you.
So just going down my list of questions here, in regards to Commissioner Gardias's concern about the lack of turnout here, and also considering Commissioner Alcheck's response to that, I would just advise to perhaps consider doing a little bit more in publication to the community before it goes before the ARB, and also to City Council, just so that there isn't any sort of backlash or complaints later on in the process, because that's happened when the community doesn't feel properly notified. So if you can go above and beyond, that would be great. I would also recommend, if it's possible, to make the designation of service commercial consistent across the planning documents. In regards to the project itself, I'm mostly looking at it from the perspective of being a renter myself and the livability of these types of units and surrounding retail spaces. I do go by that area quite frequently. I was really surprised a couple weeks ago when I was looking for Mike's Bikes and it was gone. Couldn't figure out what happened. So thank you for coming tonight and explaining to me what's going on over there. On that note, just curious, how far is Mike's Bikes set back? Just because I'm more familiar with that property, and is this current plan set back further than where Mike's Bike is currently located? Because Mike's Bikes does seem quite far set back from the street.
Yeah, it's actually in the CS zoning, which I think is, table is it? Hold on one second. Attachment D, for the CS comparison, the existing, page 84 of your packet. Let's see, so it's set back, it looks like, where is it? 11 feet to create a 19-foot sidewalk, where 8 to 12 feet effective sidewalk, and 0 to 10 feet is the zoning code. So it's actually making it more consistent with the zoning code from existing. And there's also build to line requirements along El Camino Real, which obviously it doesn't meet right now, so 0% is built to the setback. So.
And I noted that our speaker tonight from the community made an accusation that tenants were forced to leave. I would like to hear any comments on the terms of why the property was vacated, if you have any knowledge on that. And also if this has anything to do with retail sales, success of the business, things of that nature.
I don't know.
May not be relevant, but I was just kind of curious, and it goes into the future use of that property and the types of tenants that you are going to be attracting.
Mike's Bikes lease was expiring. They had an option to extend it. They elected not to extend it. They've suggested they're looking at other consolidation opportunities and haven't decided whether to open another store in Palo Alto or not. But they were not forced out. They had the option to stay longer. And, so the retail uses that go on there go back into the new space. We're not sure who they're going to be. Mike's Bikes, if they wanted to come back, and we'd be open to talking with them. We're not trying to push them out in this case at all. Other than that, the property was not occupied by any other buildings. When we bought the property, the whole Fry's portion of the property, there was a finger came up. There used to be a used car salesperson location on half of that frontage. And since our ownership of it, that's always been left unoccupied.
Thank you. I was just curious. I know it doesn't necessarily go to what we're deciding tonight, but that's just helpful background information. And given the number of tenants that you're looking to have occupy the site, I would just request that, to the extent it's possible, to encourage retail that would be embraced by the residents and, to make it a very livable environment for folks. I was curious also about wanting to create gathering spaces and increase socialization. Are there any current examples of that on El Camino? Are there?
So in our zoning code, we do have open space requirements. Again, in attachment D, the zoning talks about having landscaping space of 30%. This site is providing 42%.
I just haven't seen anything close to what they're suggesting as far as having a robust, pedestrian-friendly community right on our most busy thoroughfare. Commissioner Alchek is mentioning to me that he's seen such a thing in Mountain View. So to the extent that the project could make that type of environment truly successful and safe, I would want to encourage that and just be mindful of the fact that we are trying to build and foster community and not have transient tenants coming in and out. And we're really trying to increase our housing stock and be mindful of that.
Yeah. Sorry, go
Did you have a comment?
I was just going to note that I guess what I would say to that is that these node areas in particular, that's kind of the whole vision for these areas, is to have those opportunities. So in a lot of areas along El Camino Real right now, it's not very pedestrian friendly, and it doesn't have a lot of gathering spaces, but that's really what the South El Camino Real design guidelines and the comprehensive plan is looking to do, and that's why we push so hard on those specific guidelines and have tried to encourage in this project and in others for those gathering spaces on corners and a lot of pedestrian amenities, benches, et cetera. So.
Well, the designation in the zoning, from what we've just read tonight, is not really consistent with that. It's zoned to have transit-dependent type of retail spaces there rather than,
so
just pointing that out.
Yeah, and I do agree. I agree with that, but at the same time, in these node areas, those South El Camino Real design guidelines do encourage that, even for those types of uses that are happening.
They encourage drive-up type of retail space usage. That's what I read in the definition.
No, the South El Camino guidelines.
Did I read the wrong?
She's saying the
Am I reading the wrong definition?
So this site is regulated by various levels of guidelines, comprehensive plan, zoning regulations, things of that nature. So there's various levels of review that this project needs to go through. So comprehensive plan is just the highest level, but in this particular area, we do have El Camino design guidelines. These are actually the South El Camino guidelines. Yes. And so the principles in that guideline really weigh heavily on creating a pedestrian atmosphere.
So that'll trump the definition on page L24 of our current comp plan.
They all work together.
Okay. And then in regards to the parking adjustment of the 4 fewer spaces, I think that with what we're seeing in technology and shared car services on-site, or our ongoing planned reductions of SOV, increased public transit, independency on bicycle usage, things of that nature, the fact that this is close to a lot of jobs, public transportation, I'm not that concerned about it, and I'm fine with supporting it. And lastly, this is more of something for the ARB to consider. If they do review our transcripts, I don't even know, but just be mindful again of people living there and the enjoyability of the units themselves in respect to minimizing noise from the street, noise from units above and below. I'm sure that's baked into your plans, but just emphasizing that. And also, perhaps south-facing windows to foster more natural sunlight, things like that. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight.
I actually have a quick question for the traffic consultant. If you wouldn't mind indulging me for a second, how in your experience, because I imagine you review potentially residential sites at many different municipalities, how does the parking requirement in this project how is it comparatively or relative to the parking requirements? Like, for example, I know in San Jose it's like a negative. There's 0 parking requirements, but I'm sort of curious on the peninsula, if you will. Where do we stand?
Well, the retail you're requiring, it's a space per 200 for this project. I think that's pretty common. And for the residential, you need to know, whether it's a studio unit or 1-bedroom unit or a 2-bedroom unit to know what the parking requirement is. And I actually don't have that breakdown right here to compare it to other municipalities. I don't think this is out of line, that's for sure.
Okay. No, I was just sort of
right.
I wanted to understand your
It does vary, that's true.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Before I call for a motion, is there...
Chair, if I can interrupt.
Oh, that's right.
I actually neglected to remind the commission earlier,
Yes.
Because this is a quasi-judicial item, we should have disclosures of any contacts you may have had.
Yeah, I was expecting you to do it after.
Yeah, sorry.
But that's all right. You forgot twice. All right. So I forgot to ask. Is there anyone who has any disclosures to make about this particular, for this particular item? Good. That's good. Okay. All right. So before I call for a motion, is there any other comments that anybody wants to make?
I thought we were going to continue.
Yeah,
We
no,
just
that's
started.
why I'm asking. I want to make sure.
Yes, let's
ahead.
continue. I don't know if others have other comments, but I do have.
Go ahead.
So I'd like to respond to your comments, since you just commented on my deliberation about the consolidation of the lots. So notion behind the segregation of the lots is and related competition, variety, diversity, different architecture, and it's basically that if you had two separate lots under the same owner, you would have two separate assets, two separate tax bills, two separate accounting books, two separate treatments. The separation of the assets would be totally different than you would have under one lot. The design of this lot would be totally different if you had two separate lots than you have today. So for this reason, I raised this argument. I understand this is not pertinent for today's review, that it would be for the benefit of the city to pretty much maintain certain level of competitiveness by pretty much looking into situations like this where it may be in the interest of the competition, variety, architecture, number of different factors to have two separate legal lots under the same owner. That was the point that I was making. I hope it's clear now. So let me just go to the other items. So I'd like to take you to the page A1.30 of the plans. And then I would like to understand how come under different zonings of CS on RM30, we're arriving with the different parking ratio. If you look at the table that's at the upper right corner, and then if you calculate the ratios of the parking of the residential to the guest parking, for CS you come up with 4.8 ratio, for RM30 you come up with 4.1 ratio, which leads me to understand that this reason may be because there is a different parking requirements for those lots. But then if you look at the logic of this project, where pretty much the units are mainly the same on one lot and on the other lot, you just think that this is illogical, because same units get a different number of parking spaces?
I don't believe that it is the same unit. So our code has specific requirements based on the size of units. So whether it's a studio unit, a one-bedroom, or a two-bedroom, and I think that everything past a two-bedroom is pretty similar. Yeah, two spaces. So all the calculations on your packet on page 86 of the packet, and then also page 87 of the packet breaks down all of the parking requirements based on the type of units that are provided in each of the zone districts. And then I believe that 33% for all guest parking is required because it's assigned parking. So it means that you have to have a 33%.
So you're saying that that in reality those two projects are quite dissimilar to justify this difference in the parking, in the number of this parking spaces. Disregarding the code, I'm asking about the comparability of those two buildings.
I mean,
the reason I'm
I
asking
truly
this
don't understand the question, to be honest.
The reason that I'm asking this because when I recalculate in the numbers, I'm coming up with additional 4 parking spaces missing. It depends how you calculate. So that's the question that I have. Are those two projects totally dissimilar in the structure of the rental units to warrant that different ratio of the residents to guest parking stalls?
All of our multifamily units have the same parking regulation that is required in the code. You see that sort of listed out on page 86. Those are the multifamily parking requirements. We can certainly go back through the plans, through our documents, and make sure that all of those numbers line up. But the code is the same for all multifamily units.
So you're saying that the ratio of the parking stalls should be identical in those two cases?
There's the parking for multifamily is based on the size of the unit, the number of bedrooms. Mm-hmm. So that may be where the discrepancy is coming from.
So the structure is different to warrant those?
The mix of units is different.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to verify that this could be the case, right? So then let me just take you to another sheet of the plans. And I will try to find it as I speak. You may help me also. This is pretty much, I'd like to talk about the lighting, and it's at the back of the set. I got it. It is lighting rendering LT 1.9. LT 1.10. So when you look at this, right? So this is something that we came across when we were looking into 2555 Park Avenue. On the architectural drawings, there is a matter that we can discuss, but sometimes the drawing don't show they don't disclose certain situations, and that's pretty much hard to catch. I believe that these drawings don't disclose the situation of the lumens that would be coming from the windows, the back windows of the buildings that are along Acacia, toward the existing structures that are along Olive Avenue. So when you think about the residents that live today on Olive, they would be, once you build this building, they would be pretty much, as opposed to the dark sky when they sleep, they would be looking at the bright windows of their neighbors. And I think that this would make a significant difference for their sleeping quarters that are exactly at the back of their residences. So my first requirement is that we need to disclose it. If it's going to go to the Architectural Review Board or to the Council, this needs to be clearly shown on the drawings and brought to the Council, because if I lived in the house on Olive like this, it would change my life considerably. It would maybe make life attractive for the new neighbor that would be looking upon my building, but for my sleep, it would not be. It would be considerable change, right?
Thank you for that comment. I have to say, personally, I agree with you. I can't understand the drawings that look like this. But your point is well taken. There is, as Claire indicated earlier, quite a bit of distance between the houses on Olive and the structure. There's 48-foot setback and 20 feet on the residential parcels that are there. So it's over 60 feet, and there's a lot of screening, as we heard, landscape screening, that would address this issue, but I'm sure this is something that the ARB will look at.
Very good. Thank you very much.
So, and I do want to refer you to LT 1.5, which is part of the photometric study. So it does start to show you the numbers, the foot candles coming from these lights, and you'll notice as we get to the property line, the numbers are reduced. But your point is well taken about, especially if there's exterior balconies or something of that sort, we need to watch the lights on those.
Right, and I don't believe that the foot candle here calculation is related to the lighting that is coming out of the windows. That was my point, right? I think this is related to the landscaping and some other lighting that is around the building, as opposed to the second story windows. So I'm going to go through my other comments and allow to my colleagues speak for a moment. Thank you.
I'm satisfied with the comments I've made so far. I think, are you satisfied with do you need to make any more comments?
I actually just had one question about the street. It seemed like recently they took away the ability to do a right-hand turn from El Camino onto, what's it, Page Mill? Where the Xfinity building is. There isn't a right-hand turn lane, and so if this project is there and there's increased density, I would just request that transportation look at putting in a designated right-hand turn lane so that people can leave and turn right and get out.
Are you talking about
going northbound, just on the street,
She
on
needs
El
a
Camino.
designated right turn only lane,
Right,
as opposed
right.
to the existing lane, which allows you to make a right or go straight.
Yeah,
You're
but if
talking
you-
about at El Camino and Page Mill?
Yes, they did something recently to actually push out the sidewalk there, and
Yeah.
you cannot turn right there.
So-
You have to wait for that entire light to.
I mean, I appreciate that comment, absolutely. Our traffic analysis did not indicate that the project would have a significant impact on traffic, and that area would be outside of the property boundaries. So I don't know if legally we could require that off-site improvement.
Yeah, I think it's a separate matter.
It's a separate matter.
I can ask our transportation group to take a look at that. I know that intersection is in the county expressway plan, so they're going to look at it more holistically than we probably have.
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
No, they're-
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion I'd like to recommend the approval of the site and design application to the City Council based on the conclusion that the findings are met as set forth in Section 3.
Is there a second? Okay, hold on, let me just double check. Does our motion have to speak to the mitigated negative declaration?
Yes, it does.
I wasn't sure how to phrase that aspect.
I thought it wasn't, but I just want to make sure.
Maybe, sorry.
I don't think it's essential. It's just your recommendation to the council.
Okay, just making sure. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Do either of you want to speak to your motion?
I don't.
I just want the applicant to be a hero and put in really large trees. That would help you a lot in the community.
You have to email Dave Doctor for that. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to take a vote, and I will give any individuals dissenting an opportunity to speak to their dissent as well. Okay.
May I ask a question before we vote?
Yes.
Are you interested in a friendly amendment? I'd like to get some of the concerns. Oh, sorry. It's like a disease up here.
I think, why don't you why don't you offer your amendment, and then she can determine if it's friendly, and then you can decide if you...
Okay, I'd like to include some of the concerns we have, which may not be strictly in our purview, to highlight them, that some of my other colleagues had, and so for ARB and the council. And that would be the inadequacy of the lighting drawings that Commissioner Gardy has just mentioned. It hadn't occurred to me, but I think he makes a good point. The appropriateness in this case of the DEE and a concern about the impacts for neighbors of construction.
Why don't we treat those one at a time?
Okay.
Why don't you, well, here's my point. As the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion, you have a choice to accept the amendment as a friendly amendment or to treat it as an unfriendly amendment, in which case we would vote on the unfriendly amendment to determine whether it would attach to the motion. So far during the course of my chairmanship, I have suggested that we approach amendments as unfriendly so that we can determine if there's actually broad support for them, as opposed to having motion amendments grouped together and then potentially not reflecting the group's consensus. That's what I would recommend to you, but that is not my choice because I didn't participate in making the motion or seconding it. But she has sort of three elements. What I would suggest you do is respond to them and determine whether you want to treat them as unfriendly or friendly. If you treat them as unfriendly, we will still vote on them. You can determine if your colleagues agree with them.
So the first one would be the concerns that Commissioner Gardy has brought up about the lighting illustrations, which show buildings at night with none of the residential lights on. And that's just to have that kind of thing. The second one, so we want to make a decision.
I need to get an understanding from the two of you if you accept that as a friendly amendment or want to treat it as an unfriendly amendment.
I would just need to ask staff if that's something that would be within our purview to include in our motion.
It's not. I'm wondering if we should make this separate and just say, in addition, we encourage the ARB to look at the following issues.
So we're treating it as an unfriendly?
I mean, just have a separate motion.
You can treat it as an unfriendly, and I can all vote on it separately so to determine whether or not you have consensus.
So I'm suggesting just structurally, the better way to do it is not to accept the amendment or any of these upcoming amendments, but then do a separate motion to ARB to give consideration to these issues that we've highlighted that are definitely out of our purview, but that we have strong feelings about.
I think that's a better plan because then we can be a little more tailored in how.
Just so we're clear, I want you guys to understand something. I just want to make sure we have clarity on the process here. You're welcome to decline the amendment as not friendly, which is what it sounds like you're doing, but the maker of the now unfriendly amendment still has the, assuming there's a second, right, for the amendment, still has the opportunity to have that unfriendly amendment voted on unless she wishes to pull it and then put it in the second motion. I just want to keep our process here. Do you have a preference? Do you want to treat them as unfriendly amendments, or do you want to maybe make a motion after the fact?
Whatever anybody thinks is a cleaner process. What do you guys think is a cleaner process?
I think Commissioner Lowing's suggestion is a good one. Maybe finish up the first motion, and then if you all just stay seated, we can have a second motion about what
I'll
you
entertain it.
want the ARB to consider.
Okay. Okay, so amendment proposal withdrawn for the moment. Okay, let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of the current motion on the floor, please raise your hand and say aye. That's 5 in favor. It's unanimous. I'll now entertain any other motions.
I'd like to make an additional motion for calling out in a more specific and a direct way some of our concerns that remain with this project, and that would be the lighting drawing concerns that my colleague Gardias brought up, the appropriateness of a DEE, and in this situation, and let me know if you want me to be more specific, construction impacts and protections, especially in this case for the neighbors, and that the tree size, that the tree canopy that currently buffers the proposed project from the Olive R1 properties will be maintained with a similar tree selection and size.
I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Why don't we put it to vote? And I'll offer anyone who dissents an opportunity to speak to their dissent. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We have 4 in favor. All those opposed? 1. I'll speak to my dissent real quick. Number 1, I just don't know that the lighting document is a particular problem. I don't believe that the applicant's like trying to pull one over. And I don't know that we would have even seen that document in a packet that was sort of less prepared, and maybe that's relevant because the stages of this document will improve. That's number 1. Number 2, I think this is exactly what the design enhancement exception was made for. And with respect to the trees, I might have supported that if it was sort of a separate motion, but anyways, okay. All right, I believe that concludes, unless there's any other motions that anybody wants to make, I believe that concludes our review of item number 4. So I would like to conclude item number 4. I don't know that if I closed the public comment period, so I'm closing it and concluding item number 4. All right, item number 5, thank you for attending. Item number 5 is approval of the minutes from the June 14th meeting. So can I get a motion for approval?
I'm going to move to approve the meeting minutes from the 14th.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand and say aye. That's 3, Commissioner Lowing, Commissioner Gardias, Commissioner Suma. All those opposed? All abstentions? 2 abstentions. It's Commissioner Monk and Commissioner Alchek. Okay, thank you. Are there any, we are going to take an opportunity right now for any commissioner questions, comments, or announcements? Commissioner Lowing?
Address a question to the director. At the last meeting, we came up with a recommendation on the traffic circle on Cowper and Coleridge that was a little bit different than what staff had come in with, and I think that was a recommendation to you directly, and just wondered if there was any action on that. We didn't go into a lot of detail about the alternatives there, but could in a more noticed meeting.
Yeah, thanks for the follow-up question. I think I had a brief conversation with the chief transportation official before he left on his month of personal leave, and I think he was going to take we were going to take the commission's recommendation and run with it. He wanted to look at how it fit into the context of the other intersections along that section of roadway, but I think he was going to, he thought, we asked for your opinion, and we were going to be able to take your recommendation.
Because I know that there have been some other emails floating around about what's happening, and I've just responded that it's in your hands for a decision. So.
Yeah, well, as the commission heard, the opinions are pretty split on what the solution is, but I thought you gave it a thoughtful consideration, and we're going to be able to act on your recommendation.
So does that mean that there's no reason to continue the pilot and that could be removed soon?
Yes, I don't know how soon exactly. I'll have to consult with the staff, because what they want to do is if they implement your recommendation in lieu of the traffic circle, they wanted to look at whether there was a need for another modification at a nearby intersection. And I confess that I wasn't paying as close attention as I probably could have to the whole explanation.
I think that was a longer-term thought that we had, but,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
No. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, great. Concluding the July 12th Planning and Transportation Commission. The time is 9:37. Thank you.